Hi, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Friday night of Heavy Metallurgy. This is episode number 99. As you may notice right away, my intrepid co-host, Ellen, is away with family stuff for the evening. So I'm holding down the fort, but I've got two very awesome co-hosts that are going to help me out, and we're going to have a good time tonight. But before we get into that, good to see everybody already filing in. Cheers to everybody. Quick stuff, t-shirt, link in the description for shirts. I promise there's a new design coming. I'm just super busy right now. I'll get them up soon. Super chats, super thanks, all that stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. You know the drill. But without further ado, let's get these guys in here. We've got Jim from Eihwaz Recordings. Jim, you're no longer the Wednesday album club guy. You've reached the precipice.
I know, man. I actually felt a little bit of butterflies. I gotta be honest. I'm like, wow, that's the big time, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. Well, we'll get a guy here that can help you through the night. Kellen, Killing for Company, another wall jumper from the Wednesday crew. It's good to have you over, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have both of you guys on. Thank you so much for hanging out tonight. And yeah, it's good to see you. And everybody, please, the link for Eihwaz Recordings is in the description below. Jim's got a bunch of really cool stuff to sell of the metal persuasion and some dungeon synth stuff as well. And Kellen, of course, does Killing for Company. He is also going to be on Sunday afternoon with Jeff over at Gas Masks and Hand Grenades. They're going to be doing a deep dive on the Neurosis catalog. So that should be a fun one to watch on Sunday. Do you know what time and stuff that is happening?
5 p.m., I believe, is when we get started.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, greetings, fellas. How are we all doing tonight?
Excited for a Friday night Heavy Metallurgy and happy to be here with my Wednesday night album club buddy. So
that's right.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, great. We've been wanting to do this for a while. Good opportunity. I'm glad to have you guys over. But I guess the first question is, when we were trying to figure out a topic for tonight, we decided that the least amount of prep would be pick a year, favorites from a year. And Kellen jumped right up and stood at attention and said 2009. And I'm like, 2009.
What
Okay.
is wrong with you?
So what's so great about 2009, Kellen? 2000. Why did that one stand out in your head?
Well, I guess first off, we had I think 1986, which is for most metalheads considered potentially the most important year in the history of the genre, and I think 95 is what we did previously. One of the cool things about heavy metallurgy is not only do you have like Darcy and other, the previous week you could have Aaron the Metal Theologian and Alan talk about the new wave of British heavy metal, but then you can have someone like myself come on and talk about their favorite records from 2009. So I thought it was a different opportunity to talk about a very different time period in the history of the music and kind of get a glimpse into something after the year 2000, supposedly more modern, but 14 years.
Oh my God. So don't say it. Wow.
Yeah. Which is kind of what I wanted to get into. I'm constantly thinking about like that. In some part of me says that's recent history, but I actually think about 14 years ago. That's actually a good amount of time and probably enough history for key records to accumulate sort of a bit of notoriety and importance to the genre.
Right. What were you doing in 2009, Jim?
Oh man, let's see. Well, I was still in Atlanta, Georgia, plotting my escape. We were, I was getting wins from my friends Tony and Heather about how awesome Northern Michigan was, and so we were making plans to do our first visit, and which, as you know, led to me moving there, meeting you, and the rest is history. Lived there almost 8 years. Still miss it terribly down in Florida to be with family, but I love Northern Michigan, and all my friends that are family that are there. So yeah, that's what I was doing. And I was still I was really getting and about 2007 I was really kind of tired of death metal and really started getting into black metal really hardcore. So I was still really exploring black metal at that time. And then of course I met you and just all the gloves came off and you're like, I have such sights to show you.
Right. Yep. I'm trying to think. 2009. All the years just blend together for me. Wow. You still running, Ryan? That's craziness. I can't really remember. I mean, just I've always been a searcher when it comes to music, and coming out of the Maniacs Worm Gear thing, when Jim would return, would move here, and we'd become friends, and we ended up rekindling Worm Gear online, strictly online. He was the co-editor, and we did that for a number of years. And that just pulled me even further into just wanting to find as much new stuff as possible. It's just, the hunt is fun. The hunt is fun, and it always pays off. It always reveals some serious classics. So yeah, I mean, 2009, just maintaining, I guess. I just can't believe it's been 14 years. You start putting numbers on stuff, it just reminds you how quickly it goes. You know what I mean? But
Right.
yeah, Kellen, you had some idea to something to set us up.
Yeah, I just thought for something for us to kind of get into and chat about before we start pulling out records. The idea of how long a record needs to sort of be released before it becomes considered a classic is kind of what I was curious about. Like, at every point, in your life, you have a certain time period where a brand new record comes out and you absolutely love it, can't put it away, can't stop listening to it, immediately connect to it, right? But it has to sort of stir over some time period before it sort of warrants being considered a classic record for you. So just so you know exactly what I'm talking about. I know for some of your favorite records, like in the note that I sent your way, I know, like, Marty, for you, Awaken the Guardian's an important record, 1986. I know for Jim, Leprosy from Death is an incredibly important record, 1988. So there's some point in your life, you pull those records out, you absolutely love them. They're mystical, powerful records, but they don't necessarily, you can't necessarily in that same year consider them to be potentially a classic in the way that we critically understand them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious, for you personally, how long did that take? As you grew with those records over time, when did you start to realize their importance, not only for you personally, but as a metalhead, like the entire scope of metal as a genre? When did they become classics for you?
Go ahead, Jim.
It's a really fantastic question.
Yeah.
When Leprosy came out, my first exposure to it actually was in the Ultimate Revenge Part 2 VHS, and I bought that for Dark Angel. I was and still am a huge Dark Angel fan, but when Death came on, they played right before them on that live recording. I was blown away. I'd never heard anything like it. I was like, this is the new metal right here. This crushes everything. And the part of that VHS that got the most spins on me was just I'd rewind it over and over, just watch that whole performance over and over again. And I did, I may not have realized at the time that was going to be, to me, a classic, and maybe to a lot of other people, but I knew that metal had turned a corner with that album. And of course, it really had turned with Scream Bloody Gore, but I came into Scream Bloody Gore after I heard Leprosy first. But for me, it was so unlike anything I'd ever heard, but yet so much more intense and angry, and just had so much going on that I knew that it was something special. And for when it became a classic, it's really hard to say for me. I was with Chuck through the progression years, and the progressive years. And, and at the time, like a lot of people, and, Mario will tell you, he wasn't a fan of that. And a lot of metalheads weren't. A lot of metalheads were like, Chuck, what are you doing, when he came out with Human and stuff like that.
I liked it, but I still preferred Scream Bloody Gore. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And I still prefer Leprosy. It's still my favorite album by Death. But I was kind of playing with some musicians that were doing a lot of weird things at the time. So I kind of got it, but I knew, I think I knew really, it was probably the mid 90s. I was like, this is really classic stuff. This album's never going to go away. So for me, maybe if something is still being talked about, for me personally, like 7 to 10 years later, with high regard for the most part in a critical sense, then I think that's when it kind of starts to gel and become classic. But maybe not until around the 10-year mark, but it starts around 7. If a record gets like 7 years old for me, and people are still like, man, I love this album so much, and that's kind of the general consensus with metalheads, and then I've got a good sense that this might become that, but especially around the 10-year mark and beyond. And that's completely arbitrary. That's just my personal experience. This is not a scientific, determination by any means, but the albums that have stayed with me, like they're the ones that I keep coming back to 7, 8, 9, 10 years later. That's what becomes a classic to me. And Leprosy is surely one of those, along with, many others, of course, but yeah, I hope that kind of answers it, for me, but that's when it really starts to gel for me, is in that time frame.
It's a great question. And, it's one of those things you don't think about when you're in the moment with an album. And I think back to things. I look at all the stuff I have in the stack here. Yeah, there's a lot of great records here, but do I think any of them do any of these hold a candle to my thoughts and feelings on, Awaken the Guardian? We'll use that as the guidepost. No, but, I think the whole classic, for me, a lot of things that I deem as classics, they invoke a personal connection, and typically that personal connection all boils down to my youth, my formative years of getting into this music, when there were less bands, and the bands that I found hit so hard and had such an impact on my life. I'll look at an album and I can't wait to listen to it. Like, it just puts me, it takes, it's like a time traveling device. It takes me back to being a teenager and being so excited, the money I scraped together to buy this record, and it's awesome, and it gives me goosebumps. It's just a very, very special, it's a very special connection with art, with music, with another person's creative vision. And I start looking at this stuff here. Yeah, there's some complete bangers in here, but I'm older. I've had more experience. I've had so much more time, and so much time dedicated to listening and consuming music, not only buying it, but listening to it. The goosebumps go away after a while, because, there's nothing, very, very few things new under the sun when you start, really slicing and dicing it. And the bands that are something new under the sun, it could have a huge impact, but just not have the staying power. Look, something new and shiny. It's really exciting. It's different. But at the end of the day, new, exciting, and different isn't something I want to listen to. I want to listen to, that comfortable, you walk into grandma's house and you smell the pie cooking type of feeling at Christmas time. That's the feeling I want with some of these records. And that's what the feeling I get with some of these records. It's like I'm coming home. I'm coming back to a much younger version of myself. Something that was just filled with wonder. This stuff here, I've been beaten up and been around the block a bunch of times with this music, and it's amazing. There's some great shit here, but it's just a couple here could be considered classics, but I sure don't spin them like that. It's just not the same. It's just not the same connection for me. But what do you think? What do you think on this, Kellen?
Well, so for me, like, I definitely, there's some home cooking in here, so to speak. But kind of the follow-up I have was, so by the time, oh, sorry, hold on. I don't know who's trying to get a hold of me. I apologize.
No, don't worry. It's all good.
The time period in my life. So this, was not very early in my metal listening. I'd spent a good amount of time by 2009, like listening to metal records. But I'm sorry, this is my wife's trying to get a hold of me in Europe.
No, go ahead. No, talk to her.
Okay.
I'll kick you out. Wave when you're
Okay.
ready, or send a
Okay.
private message. Do it.
Okay.
Take it.
Okay, hold on.
But anyway, yeah. I mean, Jim, I don't know what you think, but it's not like you're listening to Death's Leprosy and thinking, 10 years from now this is going to be, a classic. It's just you're in the moment, you're living the moment, you're spinning the record a million times. You don't realize,
Yeah, definitely not in the moment. All I knew was that it was special to me, and I just couldn't get enough of it. You know what I mean? I wanted more of this sound, and thus began, my journey into the, I was already there, I guess, really with, I had one Bathory tape I was listening to, and I had some Venom and stuff, but death metal really, that really started to take shape for me there. So yeah, I wasn't thinking about tomorrow. I was definitely living in the moment. And I was certain about, I think that has to do with the age as well. You feel like you're going to live forever. So, but you're also like just completely focused on it. And that's what I was looking for at that time was just, I wanted sheer brutality. You know what I mean? I wanted the heaviest thing, I was as a dyed in the wool thrash kid, and I was eating up Thrash Metal Magazine and Boryar, Kurgan. You always correct me on how I truly pronounce his name, but yeah, I used to like whatever he gave a thumbs up to, I would buy. It was through him that I, bought Terrible Certainty, Celtic Frost, all that stuff. He would do the reviews and I'd go get it. And all those, I felt like this whole world opened up to me of heaviness and intensity and music and so though the classic, where it was going to take me wasn't at the forefront of my mind, but the joy that I derived from it certainly was, and it stayed with me to this day. And even though the goosebumps are fewer and far between, there are moments, you know what I mean, that every once in a while, man, like I'll listen to Choke on It or something, and it'll get me, and I'll just be like, rah! I'll feel that again, you know what I mean, and the hair will raise on the back of my neck. And so I'm sure Chuck, wherever he is probably happy to hear that.
Yeah. And and another thing that would constitute as a classic is something that inspires you to want more of that, and devour and try to find more bands like that make you feel the same way. But Kellen, you were saying hopefully Corinne's good, everything's good.
Yeah,
okay,
she's good. She's good. Thank you so much. I apologize.
No, dude, you could have taken more time. It's all fine.
Okay. But where I was going was I was around my mid-20s during this year, and not only did I have still some potential for establishing an emotional connection, whatever, like you were talking about, but I'd also developed a little bit of cynicism. I didn't just let everything in like you do when you're 14, 15 years old. Like I had a bit more of a palate. I had bias. I was probably to some degree less forgiving of some things than I was, just trying to be moving towards stuff that was more aggressive. Anyway, I was curious as to that time period, right? Because it's not just, when I've heard you talk about writing for Worm Gear, it's yes, there was stuff that you were really into, and I'm sure a lot of the mid 90s, I know this is a big black metal time period for you. But you had also started to sour on a little bit of the death metal stuff. And I thought that was for me, there was stuff that I got tired of by 2009. I had started to get burnt out on some things and was curious to sort of open new doors. And I think 2009 is also, the metal scene's in a bit of a transition. The end of the decade, I think you see sort of standards changing in terms of what's becoming increasingly popular, and what had been sort of established in the early 2000s and mid 2000s in a lot of ways, I think starts to shift. towards what we kind of see today. So I just was kind of curious in terms of like thinking about that time period for you. I was open to making to classic records in the same way that you were listening to like Hades or Emperor. You know, like those records, those are not your first metal experiences by any means, but they're still classic records for you. And I think some of the records I'm pulling out are going to be in that vein. Like it won't be my first grandma's cooking, whatever, mac and cheese sort of experience.
Green bean casserole.
Yeah. But it will. There are some records here that resonate with me with that at that level. That I still sort of, when I see them on the shelf, I'm like, oh my God, I remember that kind of deal. So,
and it's the albums that you think that are classic too, you know, that do bring that bit of nostalgia and were very instrumental in sculpting your taste. Those albums subconsciously help you say what's good or bad about the new stuff. Like this pile here. I mean, there's so much other stuff that influenced me that makes me like these more than others, you know? So, I mean, it has those classics have a hand in sculpting your style, what you like, what you don't like. It's very important. And it's often the question's good because it's not something people normally think about. It's instinctual. It's, you know, it's subconscious,
right.
A subconscious level.
Right.
But yeah. Is there anything else we wanted to go on this topic before we start?
I'm good. I think we're good to start pulling out some stuff.
Start the journey.
Start the journey. Okay. We're just going to do one at a time. We'll take turns. We'll start with Jim.
All right.
Here we go. 2009.
Here we go, guys.
Yep.
Panopticon.
So my stack too. Yep.
Absolute stunner. You know, I think this was, and and correct me if you guys want to, but I think this is really where the style that we associate, Austin with, the just perfect combination of atmospheric black metal, bluegrass and all that, and stark political and stances in nature and all, like everything that is Austin, I think really comes together on Collapse. Like he was leading up to it with his first full length and his demos, but that full circle of like who he was, as a person, I think comes through on this record a lot. And, listening to it again this week and prepping for the show, I was just like, man, it's so funny, when, obviously, Austin's on Byron, we've all met and hung out. When you have a beer with Austin, he's just such a regular dude, and you forget. It's so easy to forget, like, the dude is truly a musical genius. He is. I mean, the soundscapes that he creates, where he gets all of that and then turns it around and makes it into something so unique. I don't know. I don't have that capacity as a musician. Never have. And he
plays everything on his albums. Everything.
Yeah, everything is his. He composes everything, every instrument, and he's always trying new instruments. He'll pick up something, he'll just start shredding at it. It's kind of annoying, actually, when you're not a great guitar player to see someone do that. I remember we were all hammered in Marty's basement one night, and he picked up Marty's guitar and just started shredding arpeggios. And I was like, dude, just stop that. He goes, it's so easy, Jim. Look, let me show you, man. It's not that hard. Look,
I remember. I could hear you're all hammered, and he's like, no, you just do like this. And Jim's like going,
I'm just like, dude, no, it's not easy. I don't want to
Jim's left-handed on a right-handed guitar, and Austin's like, no, do it like this. And I'm just like, yeah, right.
It was a joke, but anyway, a classic album. And all Panopticon means a lot to me, especially because we have personal connection. We're friends, and it's just fantastic. If you have for some reason slept on any Panopticon, I recommend all of them, but this is a great place to start. Collapse is a killer record and a 2009 gem for sure.
Right on.
Was that the first one you heard, Jim?
No, On the Subject of Mortality was the first one I heard, which was the year after, and then I went back and started getting the first one and the second one, which I think I got them first on CD from Marty, and then I went and got the vinyl versions later. But on the Subject it's I'm always like, you ask me on a different day. It's sometimes like On the Subject of Mortality, my favorite. Some days I like Kentucky, my favorite. I always go back and forth between those two. Very, very powerful personal albums, both of them. And yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Panopticon, man. Yeah, he's a great guy and an even more consistent and amazing musician. So.
Yeah. Second, that was in my stack. I don't have to show it. All right, Kellen, you're up.
Okay. So we'll start here with black metal for the evening. I'll start on that stack I have. Debut release from, I have no idea. This is going to be one of those. I have no idea how to pronounce the title for this, but Oranzi Pazuzu. Their first release, debut 2009. And maybe I'll just put it in the chat. Mikalenin Puhu? Nailed it.
Are they Finnish, I'm assuming?
Yes, Finnish.
You can tell.
But man, this was such a unique, to even, what do you want to, I don't even know if this is the right term to call this black metal. It is just weird. I guess it's rooted there. I think people were calling it psychedelic black metal at the time. Anyway, Finnish band doing something very unique, eerie. There's organ and synths, very strange, sort of almost noise rock guitar style on this album. But a unique and powerful debut. And since then, I mean, this year for me is definitely highlighted by bands that were kind of left field and doing something a little bit different, but I think have stayed on my radar and are some of the more important bands for me personally, just because in an era that increasingly became defined by bands who were trying to sort of go back to an old well and return with something that was not necessarily second rate, but like maybe there's more gold back in whatever 1992. I'm going to go back to that mine and see what I can find. Oranzi Pazuzu did not take that route, and a lot of the bands that I'll be talking about tonight that are really important to me play in a similar sort of, you get the similar narrative, I should say. We're trying to take chances in doing something a little bit different. But awesome debut from Oranzi Pazuzu. And for those out there who don't know this band, like, it's definitely a little bit left field, kind of modern metal, but worth checking out. Great debut.
Awesome. Oops, that's Jim. This is me. Okay, this first one here is one that I've got a very personal connection to, and to those who don't know, I run Binary Recordings with my friend Austin. Jim also helped out with this quite a bit over the years, and the label, as anybody knows, getting a label started is it's quite an uphill battle. I don't know if it ever stops being an uphill battle, but finding a style and finding a direction. And, you know, I put out some good records early on. They're a little bit all over the place. And thank you to MySpace, which was still available at this time, I came across this band called Woden's Throne via MySpace. I listened to the samples they had up on there. I'm like, holy crap, this sounds like Emperor, an English Emperor. And I just could not stop spinning the stuff I heard on there. So I reached out to the band and said, hey, I do this label. Let's work together. They said yes. And they went to Romania and recorded this album with Negru. Is that how you say his name? He's passed away. But he recorded in Negru's from Negura Bunget, his studio, which was attached to a car parts garage. And they recorded this album, Loss. This is probably my favorite release we've ever done. I mean, I love a lot of stuff we've done, don't get me wrong, but this album is truly a special moment in time. I mean, their follow-up album, Curse, is also amazing. It's great, but this album is just super special. There are just songs on here that it's a flood of emotion, just the way they're composed, the key changes, the way they compose, the vocals, everything, the keyboards, everything, the way everything interacts on this album is perfect. And again, early Emperor coming out of England it's really good. And probably need to reissue this at some point if the band wants to do so, but I don't know. This thing is huge for me. This kind of got Bindrune going in a different direction. And I'm still working with some of the guys in their new project, Nemeris, which is very, very good as well. Put out an EP of theirs a couple years ago. Hopefully they got something new coming. Haven't talked to them in a little while, but Woden's Throne Lost. If you folks have never heard this, do yourself a favor, check it out. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
It's crushing. It's absolutely crushing.
Yep.
Is that available at Bindrune?
No, it's long gone. It's long sold out.
It's in my stack for tonight too.
Jim bought them all.
It was released on vinyl by a label from England. I can't remember the name. It's really super deluxe package. Candlelight Records. We did some deal with Candlelight. They reissued it on CD only, I think, for Europe years ago. They signed the band for their second album, and then the band broke up. So, yeah, a very important record, I think, for England, for black metal at the time. I think it was just a eye-opener how modern black metal bands still could hang on to that spirit. Yeah, Thorn Laceration. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, the vinyl is crazy. It's like a 2-sided poster and just super deluxe packaging. It's really nice products all the way around. But yeah, they showed that, taking the old school, moving it forward with a modern edge, it was just a powerful record. But Jim.
Oh yeah, okay.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us tonight, by the way. 73 people. Very cool. Cheers, everybody.
Kellen, I beat you to it. Ruins of Beverest. Fellow seaman of a sheltered elite.
Great record.
Yep. Alexander. Yep. Oh yeah, different covers. Yep. I think yours is the original, right? I can't remember. Yep. I'm cheap. I don't buy OG presents. I'm very cheap. No.
What's up, Jurgen? Cheers, brother.
Hell yeah, man. Ruins is absolutely one of my favorite bands. I have all their stuff. I will continue to buy all their stuff unless Alexander just completely takes a dump. Sonically, but I think his music is utterly unique. I think it's one of the only bands that are still around putting out music that when I listen to it, I truly feel like I'm entering a different realm. I feel like I'm going somewhere that's very dark and I'm taking on a journey. And this album is absolutely no exception. I really feel I love the first two, but I think on this one, I think this is when the sound that in much the same way how Collapse, I think, embodies what Panopticon was to become. I feel like this album embodies what Ruins was to become. And there's a lot of elements of this album that I think themes thematically and sonically that continue through his later work. And I also have to mention on the very last track, 8 minutes in, is one of the best God-sized riffs ever. I mean, it's just I just want to kill something. I mean, it is absolutely killer riff. It's go to the last song if you haven't heard this. Skip to 8 minutes in and just play it, and it will just crush your skull. I mean, it's one of the baddest ass riffs ever. I mean, this guy is just amazing, and much the same way like how I was, speaking of Austin, how I don't know how he comes up with these soundscapes. Alexander's the same way. I think that he's the way that he brings all this different instrumentation together. But it doesn't sound like a mess ever. It all works, and it really takes you out of your present reality and into the depths of your mind or whatever, just somewhere different. And I think that's what the best music does is it unseats you and unsettles you. And this album will do that. And so if for some reason, and I wouldn't understand why you haven't heard this yet, get on the train, man. Yeah, any Ruins is great, but this one is definitely one of my favorites and a highlight of anything that came out that year. So
Right on. Kellen, do you want to throw anything in
Oh,
on that?
man.
It was in your
Okay.
stack. It was in your stack, so you might as well.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it for a minute. I'm going to go use the little boy's room. Be right back.
Okay. So, like, I know you were talking about sort of where you were in your life in this year. In 2009, this is a brief aside to kind of set up my relationship with this record. I was living in South Korea, and there were a couple of guys there who were really into metal. So we would find a bar in the evening and just kind of walk in, and they would let us play music, just YouTube the music off the television and play it through the plate. So of course we started putting metal, songs on, and everyone just empties the bar and we shut the place down and just continue to party through the night.
nice.
Anyway, there was a guy from South Africa, another one from Newfoundland, and that was like just the three of us that would just dominate these rooms. And I remember the guy from South Africa turned to me and was like, "Do you know Ruins of Everest?" And I was unfamiliar, and he's like, "Just incredible atmosphere, man." And I thought I knew what he meant, right? But I just like, when you hear atmosphere, you kind of like assume it's something to do with like black metal and whatever. It completely blew my mind, because this record, like it opens with like a tom, like there's like a single hit, like a slap, and then it just launches in, right? And that's eternally just that moment of like, wow, that was not what I saw coming. I agree with you, Jim, in terms of like, this is a turning point for the band. That I think after this, the record that follows that we covered for Album Club, Blood Vaults, like those are the two that seem to encapsulate Ruins at their best.
They started to get really nightmarish on Foul as Semen. They really went from more of a standard black metal feel
Right.
to something way more interdimensional.
Sure, and I kind of mentioned, it's an interesting mix of, there's kind of parts that feel doomish, almost a point of like funeral doom. Some parts are I think the second or third track is this really intense sort of blasting section where you can tell he was the drummer for Nagelfar. And then
which I also wanted to show off these.
Oh,
If
there you
anybody
go.
is not familiar,
Nagelfar, he came prepared. Yeah.
Yeah.
First
Nice.
one, my favorite. This album is absolutely crushingly awesome. And then the last one, Virus West.
Yeah, I remember jamming to that on the way back from Grand Rapids in your truck. Listening to that, I was like, "That's awesome."
Didn't mean to interrupt you, Kellen, but you mentioned
go ahead.
Nagelfar. I wanted to show that. Not the Swedish Nagelfar, the German one with an E.
Yes, I want to say last night I was revisiting this record. I want to say it's the fourth track, the first song on side B of, but it just sounded so large. These records sound enormous. And I just, in that sense, it almost reminds me a little bit of like the scale of a Funeral Doom record, but what's happening inside of this band, in terms of all the different facets that they seem to weave, a completely unique project. This is potentially, like, this and Blood Vaults, they're my favorite depending on which one I'm listening to. Like, you would have put on Blood Vaults, I would change my thought, but but as soon as this record starts to play, I go back to it, and I'll never forget that initial sort of impression that I had in Yongsan, South Korea. So
Hell yeah, man.
Well, you guys have lived a different. I was born here. I'm going to die here. I tell you, you need to get out more. I guess
Traverse City is beautiful.
It's nice. I like it. I have no reason to leave unless they kick me out. But Kellen, why don't you move in?
There, I probably would have left.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and jump into your next one, Kellen. You double teamed on the Nagelfar, but I'm sorry, Ruins. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll keep this my theme of albums I cannot pronounce. But if you had told me in 2009 that like you kind of mentioned with your last CD or album, Marty, like 2009 was not a bad year for symphonic black metal. So I see that I don't know if Peter from the Metal Vault still in the chat, but I cannot pronounce this, but this is one of two releases from 2009 from Poland's Helveto.
Oh, he's got a million albums.
Right. There's just two in 2009 alone, but
There's a Stryborg for every decade, and this was Stryborg of that decade.
Ode
Stryborg was going too.
Na Polnuk. Nailed it.
You did. You sounded Polish there for a second. Good job. Yep.
Oh man. So, but this is a symphonic black metal record, but also one that probably is less sort of keyboard specific. It's definitely like a pagan side of symphonic black metal. Anyway, this is an awesome record. I actually need to go back and collect more from this artist, but kind of a sneaker. Like, you don't necessarily think 2009, you don't associate it with the like best years of symphonic black metal. But there's a couple here that are absolutely killer, and I love listening to that album. For those people who want symphonic black metal with a little bit more of like a pagan acoustic style to it, check out Helveto for sure.
I didn't know this. Changed the name of the band to Neo Heresy. Cool. Didn't know that. Well, that's a very surprising pull for you. Crazy. I never would have seen that coming. I haven't thought about that project in ages. Good one. All right, I'm next, I guess. Man, this album. This is a big one for the year. It made a lot of end of year lists, and looking over a list of stuff for 2009, I was psyched to see this on the list because I haven't spun it in a long time, and putting it on today, it just took me right back to, I spun this a lot when it came out, and this album is crushing. Cobalt Gin. This album, it's like a mix of black metal. It's got like the tribal side of Neurosis with the punk vibe to it. There's like a distorted, perverted Americana thing going on here. This is like a second or third album. I don't know. This is the only one I own by this band. I know their early album was kind of like a war metal CD. This is just super urgent, organic, scathing, and hard hitting. The way it's produced so well. Just simple things, chords hitting over and over and over again. It just clench your teeth, clench your fist type of stuff. This album is really well written. The vocals are excellent. There's everything from, harsh black metal vocals to more of a kind of like a sad bastard country, style over a twisted acoustic guitar. I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff going on here. If you've not heard Cobalt's Gin, there's a reason why this was a big deal when it came out, because it's really super unique. Very, very, very good album. And listening to it before the stream came on, I almost didn't want the stream to start. I wanted to listen to the album. So I'm going to be spinning this after putting it in the car, because this is awesome. Great, great, great record. I think Terrorizer made it their number one for the year. I don't remember. Satyricon meets Tool. Huh. Yeah. You know what? That's really not a bad. It sounds yucky hearing it like that, but I get why they say that. But dude, it's a great record. I'm crushed by it again. I'm like, wow, why haven't I spun this in so long? Cobalt Gin, check it out. Great, 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 great record. Jim.
Alrighty. It's time for the GOAT, man. Light Devouring Darkness. We got the Chris Moynihan art, as always. Just uber crushing, awesome. I think this is really when Archgoat kind of came together. I guess, this seems to be a theme here. I didn't really intend for this, but like albums kind of like really honing who they were to become in that year. And this, I think this is one of the bands. Really love this. If everybody who knows Archgoat, you're going to get it. It's pummeling war metal or Black Death or whatever you want to call it. But for my money, I'd rather listen to this than Blasphemy. Blasphemy, I know they kind of started that sound or whatever, but it's just the production on Fallen Angel of Doom is just it's too rough for me, man. You know what I mean? But when I listen to this, the combination of that pummeling, style, with better production makes it more palatable and more fun.
Catchier finished riffs too.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think the riffs are better, and just a tiny little bit of atmospherics rears its head on this album, like a little bit of keyboards just on a couple songs, but just enough to kind of give it a little additional color. And anybody out there who's got any Archcode vinyl knows how fun it is to pull out the posters with the misspellings and everything and all the crazy stuff. I mean. Archcode just makes me laugh, man. I mean, their lyrics, I mean, their song titles, which I know Marty's trying to monetize, so I won't repeat any of them here. But
we should be. We're past the 2-minute mark. We should be okay.
Yeah. I guess I'll read. Yeah, Sodomator of the Doomed Venus. Fornicated Messiah. This was actually kind of tame. It's not as bad as some of the other ones. But anyway, I'm sure most everybody watching the show has heard Archcode, for me, they just I have a good time with them. I know it sounds weird. Maybe you're not supposed to say that. Oh, it's dark and evil. And yeah, I guess it is. But Archcode makes me smile, man. They're like happy music to me for some reason. But yeah, I think this is a great album. If you haven't listened to them, Light Devouring Darkness is a great introduction to this band. And after the Triumph Vader one, I think they kind of started repeating themselves. But this era up to that album, good stuff.
Right on. Kellen.
All right. So I'll continue my symphonic black metal. I can actually pronounce this one, though. So it's first, if Simon's out there, I don't know if I don't think he's in the chat, but this is definitely a Simon pick. Head now to Australia for some
It's kind of funny. Tonight, on the way home from my sister-in-law's house, we were listening to Sirius XM and Midnight Oil was on. So I took a picture of it and sent it to Simon, and he made some comment. I'm like, oh, I thought you were in this band. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. This is Nazgul with Iconoclast, 2009. This is very much a symphonic black metal, that everything that you would think of. Trying to call it like an Emperor Throne is probably an overstatement. It's not quite as bombastic. It's a little more stripped down by comparison, but definitely keyboard driven. Awesome symphonic black metal coming out of Australia. I think they came out with a release not that long ago, but I don't think they've been the most prolific band. For most people, they probably don't consider symphonic black metal coming out of Australia to be a major thing, but for sure, if you're into that style of black metal, a little bit more of your traditional symphonic stuff, check out Nazgul.
The only thing I have by that band is Totem. Is that the name of the band, the album?
I mean, they came before?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, the Iconoclast is like their breakthrough sort of moment. But
Totem's their debut. That's the only one I've heard, I think. Yep. Oh, cool. Good pick. All right. I'm next. Okay. Well, I'm going to do something a little different. Well, maybe I'll save that for the end. Where am I going here? Let's go with this one. All right. This was a return of a long-loved vocalist. This is Death the Brutal Way by Asphyx. This is the album where Martin Van Drunen returns to the band after a long hiatus, doing other things like Hail Bullets. He was in Bolt Thrower for a hot minute. This is a return to the first couple Asphyx albums. A little bit quicker. I think they're a little doomier starting off. The Rack is one of my favorite early death metal albums, but this is really good too. Martin sounds awesome on it. And coming out in 2009, this album I kind of attribute to, and Martin's return to this band, I kind of attribute to a lot of bands still to this day coming out in the OSDM realm with vocalists that sound like Martin Van Drunen in one way or another, whether it's Maul, whether it's Skeletal Remains, whether it's, insert any band here. The singer sounds like Van Drunen. It's a great style to perfect, that raw, dehydrated, this really miserable sounding death metal style. But man, it's to the point now where it's not original. Come up with a different guy to copy. Let Martin be Martin and move on with a different style. But
you leave Martin alone.
Yeah, you leave Martin alone. And the album after this one too, Death Hammer, I like as well. Not as much as this one though. This is just really good, really catchy, really heavy. Martin sounds super sick as always. This was a cool return. The slip cover. I don't know. I hate these things. It was good to have him return. It comes with a bonus DVD live at Party Sand set as well. So very cool. If you're not an Asphyx fan, check them out. This is a good place to start, although the rack is way, 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 way better.
I got to get that one. I got Death Hammer, but I don't have it. I need to get that one.
Death Hammer's good, but I like this one better.
I was going to say, was there more momentum and like attention given to Death Hammer? Because I remember that being far more visible. Am I off on that, or?
I think they got signed to, John McEntee put this out with Ibex Moon Records. So it got a push, but it got a much bigger push when they signed to Century Media. So yeah, it was probably a little bit more.
Death Hammer, Century Media, I'm pretty sure. So
Jurgen, I could hear you in the crowd on this one, just so you know. All right. Who is next? I'm confused. Jim.
Oh, okay. All right. We're going to divide everyone here. And first of all, let me apologize. I know we all hate picture discs, but this is a picture disc of Cannibal Corpse's Evisceration Plague. I do love the Corpse, even though a lot of their albums are kind of uneven, this song or this album, it's stupid light. The title track on here is just an absolute crusher, man. I mean, that song, I just want to saw something in half. I mean, that's what the guitars sound like to me. They sound like a saw, just like it's just really, really cool. The lyrics are great too, driven to kill. This is not my will. I love it, dude. It's a Corpse Grinder at his best. There's a lot of great tracks on this. Revisiting it this week, I was kind of reminded, it's not as uneven as some of their later output actually is. It's better. There's one dumb song on here that I don't like. I think it's Shatter the Bones. That one's like it's just like a skank the whole time, and it never changes tempo. It's really weird, but for the most part, this is a really good album. Nothing new. Cannibal Corpse is Cannibal Corpse. And if you're wondering why I bought a picture disc, there was a guy in the next town over, really small record store, and really, really small. And we were cool at the time, and I was just trying to support him. This is the only version he had, and we're not cool now because he got drunk and drunked out my brother in the middle of the night after a Machine Head show and said, "Why didn't you come?" It was like, because feels like the band sucks, and why are you calling me in the middle of the night? I don't care. And so we stopped going there. It was weird, but anyway, back to the record. Cannibal Corpse.
That is weird.
Yeah.
Why didn't I come? Because it's Machine Head. Why did you go?
It was really strange. He left like 2 or 3 messages on my brother's phone. It was really weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Kellen.
All right. So staying with my last couple black metal picks for the year. This is an EP by the French band Drastis, titled Serpens Challenge Baterius Prima. Drastis sounds like, what do we want to go with here? At the time, I want to say like a very modern black metal sound. They're still holding on to a little bit of like a death industrial like texture to the guitar work here. But this is also at the same time, you have bands like Bloodhouse Nord and Despel Omega that are sort of introducing that within the French black metal scene. We just have an EP here, And I believe it didn't get a lot of recognition because it's on the artist's label of Flame Noir, I want to believe it was called. I can just double check on that. Or I'm sorry, End of All Life production. But this band, I really dug this EP, and I was listening to it digitally back in 2009. Hunted down the actual record release. It took them a decade later to put out a full length. 2019, La Crue the Song comes out, and it's a brilliant record, but kind of went under the radar just because they were dormant for an entire decade before they actually put out anything else. But a non-symphonic listen. This is pretty intense, sort of scathing stuff. But kind of an under-recognized band that kind of got rolling in 2009, but never really went anywhere. Took them an entire decade to put out a full sort of statement. But if you like a very modern sort of sound to black metal, and want something a little bit more on the like modern industrial side, check out Drastis. And definitely 2019's La Crue Song if you're looking for a full length.
Another one I've never heard of. Good job. Good job. Let's do this one first. All right. 2009 saw the return of a classic Swedish death metal band. And I don't remember there being a ton of fanfare around this or many people even really talking about this record, but Seance Awakening of the Gods, their third album. This album's good. It's good. It's solid. It's them returning to, heavy hitting, aggressive, brutal Swedish death metal. They were always on the more brutal side of the sound, where a lot of the bands coming out during their time were, embracing the melodicism and atmosphere. Seance were always a very brutal, maybe a little more deicide influence than folk or punk. Like Salt Rubbed Eyes, a real heavy bass. Jim, you'd like Salt Rubbed Eyes. It's a really heavy, distorted bass tone through the whole thing. This is a good record. Yeah, what's that? It's not really the Seance album most people wanted. It was a big delay too from Salt Rubbed Eyes. There was a long gap of them being around, and it's solid. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. Yeah, there are people from Seance that went into being witchery. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I always like this one. Is it as classic as the first two? It isn't. It just isn't. But it's solid, really heavy, well produced, well written, brutal Swedish death metal. Good stuff. Jim.
All right, so we'll take it up to Edmonton or Calgary. I think they were in both cities at some point. But Weapon,
Yeah,
Draconian Paradigm.
good band.
I love old Weapon. I love all Weapon, but the riffs on this are really cool. This is just a really good example of black death metal. Killer vocals that you can still kind of like pretty much understand, and his lyrics are very occult, like a lot of occult references. It's not just like kind of the elementary, hey Satan, blah blah blah. Though there is a lot of Hail Satan on here for sure. But a lot of occult references, like the stuff that I've never heard of. I'm like, okay, this guy's like reading out of books and stuff. I don't know what he's talking about. Yeah, I think a little bit more evil for that reason. It seems like he kind of did his homework in that realm. And also, the guy's originally from Bangladesh. He was an immigrant to Canadian from Bangladesh, and so I think that kind of has an effect on his perspectives on religion and stuff like that. But he's a great guitar player, and what I like about Weapon, and you can definitely see it more so in their subsequent albums from The Devil's Tomb, and then finally Embers and Revelations, which sadly was their last one. They broke up right after they Relapse released it, which was a bummer. He is a really good guitar player, and even though it's like, especially this album and the ones before, really raw, he still has this like love for like melodic thrash metal and like even some traditional metal. Like you'll hear that in his like guitar playing, and like there'll be thrashy, just cool thrashy type riffs, and in the midst of like super, barbaric metal, to hear like a cool thrash riff is like really weird, but somehow Weapon makes it work. And I think it's just because they're really great musicians. But yeah, they even have like gang vocals and stuff like old thrash metal every once in a while. So it's a super interesting listen. But yeah, this is a great album, Draconian Paradigm. But I definitely, I actually prefer the subsequent ones. From the Devil's Tomb and Embers and Revelations, but yeah, if you haven't heard Weapon, this is a good starting point. Draconian Paradigm, good stuff. So.
Good album. Yep, good band.
Yeah, I think you brought them up, Marty, on the Relapse stream, like one of the.
Yeah, their last album was on Relapse. I interviewed Mashrook back in the day for the Worm Gear Online. They took the war metal aesthetic and really wrote good riffs and good songs. I don't mind war metal when it's more than just one voice in a dog barking vocal style. I get it, but it's just such a well-traveled.
And these guys have a great riff variety. Every song has tons of riffs, where a lot of barbaric war metal, just like one or two or three riffs per song. Weapon riffs out the wazoo, and not easy ones to play either. I mean, the guy was a great guitar player.
I think the thing that made them kind of in the war metal was that bomb blast, the constant. That's the rhythm section is what really kind of sold that as war metal to a certain extent. But yeah, it was a good band for sure. Kellen.
All right, my last black metal release from the year for tonight. This one actually is a little bit of maybe an Eric Bauer shout out. So let's head to Brazil.
What's up, Eric Bauer? Cheers.
Yes.
I don't know if he's watching, but
Maleficarum Inferno. So there is nothing modern about this black metal release. If you are like obsessed with just an incredibly dry, high-end, scathing, fast-paced, thrashy black metal listen, completely unpretentious. This is 100% up your alley in terms of that. If you're into that style of black metal, it was actually kind of cool to go back and think about, I to some degree, there's probably Brazil's a country when it comes to black metal that's sort of shortchanged in terms of how many bands have come out from the era. But Maleficarum this is a killer band, and probably in terms of proximity, early like Gorgoroth and Marduk, that gives you some kind of idea of how sort of to the point this band is with their songwriting. But there's a little bit more of that, like, I don't know if you want to call it like drier production style that you typically get from a country like Brazil, without any of the sort of assumed doominess or mid-paced kind of stuff that you got with like Mystifier. So just stripped down, bare bones listen. If you're looking for something from this era, if you want to add to sort of your palette for Brazilian black metal, Maleficarum is a good one to check out.
Okay. Well, I'm going to kick it a little bit more normal metal, I guess. Megadeth's Endgame. This album was kind of a return to form for me. I did like The System Has Failed, which was a Dave Mustaine. He perceived it as being a solo project, but of course it ended up being a Megadeth album. And then there was United Abominations, which I didn't care for. And is that how that goes? United Abominations, System Has Failed. Yep. And then this to me, you could tell they were trying to be more aggressive again, a little bit more in the line of Rust in Peace. The whole album isn't solid like Rust in Peace is. This is a good technical thrash record, middle era, late era Megadeth record. And for the longest time, I held a lot of the things that came out after this kind of to this standard. And what came after this, to be honest, I don't remember. 13, which is not a good record in my opinion. Super Collider, which I heard a couple songs. I don't even own that one. It's not good. And then Dystopia, which is good. So it's like you've been playing music, writing music in this style for so long, they can't all be winners, but this is a winner. There's a song on here about drag racing or something, which is that this album? I don't know. The whole album isn't perfect, but this is really good. There's a lot of really good technical, solid Megadeth songs on here. I return to this on occasion. It's a good record. Yeah, solid piece of work indeed. Agreed, Tim. The best since Countdown. Right on. But go ahead.
Can we just stop there? Like, would you really recommend that I go check out? Like,
No, I would say pick a different one.
Okay.
No, if you're not a Megadeth fan, that's not the one to sell you on.
I'm a complete I'm up to Rust in Peace sort of Megadeth fan, but I'm curious here from someone who because I know like that record and the ones before it for the most part are like very close and dear to you. So I'm just curious as to your resiliency as a Megadeth fan, because we talked about when a record becomes a classic and you kind of want to go back and rediscover that feeling.
Yeah. And you hope for it in bands that have sold it to you before. And that's why bands like this become legacy bands. You can't tell me the shit that Metallica's putting, even though I still buy Metallica records, it's because of those first 3 records, man. And it always will be. Right. I want that for them again so much, but they've moved on. I haven't, but they have. I think Death Magnetic had moments of, I actually kind of like that record. There's a lot of great riffs on it, but it's not the same. And like this here, Dystopia is they got a Grammy for that record, and it's a good record. I was surprised. I bought it used, didn't listen to it for a year, and finally, I'll put this on. I paid money for it. I'm like, wow. I was surprised how solid of the record it was. But yeah, Megadeth, it's always going to be, Killing Is My Business. I love that record. Peace Sells. That is humongous record. I hated their 3rd record. Can't remember the name of it right now. So Far So Good, So What? I hate that record. But Rust in Peace. Holy shit. That record is a top 10 of all metal. It's a must record. If you're going to dig, you want to listen, you want to try Megadeth, if Rust in Peace doesn't connect with you, you're just not going to like Megadeth. It's just the way it is. But yeah, they have a lot of shitters. It's not as bad as Metallica, but they've got a lot of shitters for sure. Jim.
All right, so we're gonna go with Alda's self-titled debut.
That came out in 2009. Wow.
Yep, this is the Eisenwald reissue, so it's not the original cover because again, I'm cheap. But really good band, really bunch of nice guys. Drummer, vocalist, who you would never pick out is in a black metal band when you meet him.
Right. Mike.
Yeah, kind of, short-haired guy, glasses. He was getting his PhD in geology or something when I met him. But he can shriek and he can play the drums. He's really
at
great. And they're all great musicians. Jace, great guitar player. Great bass player. These guys are from Washington, right, Marty? Tacoma, Washington.
Yep.
And actually, Blind Moon put out their Passage album, which is even better than this one, I think. Really good. Obviously they're kind of, that Northwestern style of black metal, folky, atmospheric, nature themes, but when you live in a place that's that spectacularly beautiful, how could you not, and I know for a while, that term Cascadian black metal was bandied about, but, I think these guys were, I kind of don't like that term because I feel like a lot of those bands that were put into that, definition, they were all a lot of them I felt were very unique, like Ash Borer and, of course, Wolves and everything. But yeah, if you're a fan of that style, and you're taking a walk in the woods, or you're going to go for a hike in the mountains, this is a great soundtrack to that, so ALDA, Alda, and any of their albums, Tahoma, Passage, they're all good stuff. And these guys are still putting out music. I haven't heard their latest off Eisenwald yet, but great people, great music, and and they really kind of embody that that ethos of nature and black metal extremely well, both sonically and on an individual level. So highly recommend it.
All right, Kellen.
Okay.
Yeah, he did. Skagos asked they released that album in 09. That's a good record.
Okay, so I officially moved on from the black metal releases, and I'll move into my death metal choices. Similar to, there were a couple of records I had here that I think, when we talked about albums that are absolute classics that I will return to, whatever, like bury me with sort of records, just like Phallus Semen. You can bury me with my semen as well, but I guess. But
I was waiting, so there's a joke coming.
I saw both of you holding on to that guy. He's going to say something, but I don't want to jump in.
I'm trying to silence the inner 13-year-old. Yeah.
Okay. Everything is fire. Ulcerate. So they're a band who earlier in the 2000s was kind of coming up on a little bit of like the tech death scene, like that. If you look at hey, you know what?
That's fucking awesome, by the way.
I have as a native Oregonian, I can completely, that is very true. Well
so
said.
Perfect. Someone needs to do that.
Oh, that was awesome.
But yes, so what started off initially as sort of like a tech death sound, by the time that this record comes out, they have complete, like, the amount of growth that we get with Everything is Fire is incredible. And I think in a lot of ways, this is the record that I think I would say decades to come, people will return to as sort of like a turning point, not only for the band, but potentially as an influence for death metal as a genre. Which I think that kind of statement, for me at least, is why I will return to it over the years. Is this kind? I mean, obviously the drumming here is otherworldly.
Oh yeah, I'm a badass.
I mean, just exceptional. But like on what's happening on top of that, their guitar work, it's like, death metal gone liquid. There's like a certain wash and like ebb and flow to the way they're writing riffs. That I think was really unique at the time, and there was we don't have the kind of like, even now, as many bands that are influenced by this, I think they really helped sort of develop a vocabulary on how to write songs like that.
Isn't there a lot of gore guts on that stuff too? I mean, they're not doing anything.
There's some obscure throwback for sure, but I do think they tweak it and make it their own,
Yeah.
I love Destroyers of All. I haven't heard this one, Kellen, but I want to hear it now that you're talking about this one. I love the one that came after it a lot. So
like if you're asking me, Marty, like, does Ulcerate exist without Gorguts? I think you can make the case that it's an important band, but to me, this sounds very modern by comparison to Gorguts. Like this, I don't think you could have written an album like this prior to 2009. There was just something special about this moment. So an incredibly important band for, like, in the same way that I will talk about Ruins of Beverist, I will talk about Ulcerate. Like, they have that kind of place for me in terms of, I want to collect everything they ever put out. Like, I will listen to those records and analyze them, and in the same way any completist would. I have that much affection for them, and I think they arrived at a certain time in my death metal listening where I wanted to be challenged by something new and different, which I think was, as like I mentioned, as the tech death of the 2000s starts to fade out, I think they rightfully sort of assume a place at the forefront of the genre. So anyway, I've gone on long enough here. Rick's bringing in the jokes.
He's in for 2 seconds. He's already dropping the dad jokes
on me.
Yeah.
So,
dad jokes are in tow.
All right.
All right. I am next. Okay. Well, Jim and Kellen are keeping it, sufficiently underground and obscure. I'm going to break out of that and go completely commercial here. I got a little Megadeths to warm everybody up, but Devin Townsend project, Addicted. This it's a pretty commercial album. It's Devin Townsend. Is it Strapping Young Lad? No, there are elements of that. The real standout for me is Annika van Giersbergen from Giersbergen. Sorry, I'm not sorry. She was in The Gathering. She's just got vocals like an angel. This album has got a lot of really upper lifting, heavy songs. It's got the song Super Crush on here, which is a definite Devin Townsend classic. He plays it probably on all of his shows. I love this guy's style. No one sounds like him. I'm not a big fan of when he starts getting really super arty, like the Puzzle was kind of like an art piece, and his new record seems to be kind of alternative rock type stuff. I mean, so he's not beholden to the metal per se, and if anything, the older he gets, he probably wants to kind of distance himself away from it and doesn't want to reconnect with the Strapping Young Lad years because of where he was as a person at that point. He was very angry and drug-addled, and anyway, this is just a great record. Really well produced, good string of musicians, and Annika's voice on here is a very, very welcome addition. Yeah, Addicted, Bend It Like Bender, and Super Crush, Hyperdrive. I mean, there's a lot of really great songs on this record. A lot of good albums in his catalog. This is a fun one. Absolutely fun one. So yeah, there. I got one more that's coming that's not so super crazy, but you just have to deal with it.
All right. So this one's going to be a little controversial. So I kind of wrote something here that I want to address before I show it. So
what's up, Noah? Cheers, brother. Hope you're good.
Because I wanted to get this right, so I actually wrote it. The story is that the drummer and once the driving force behind this band took issue with his guitarist's need to transition and subsequently fired them for that decision. And the blowback from this truly ignorant act on his part resulted in the demise of the band. Prior to this, they were known for years in the underground as a quality Black Death band, and the music still is, even if Prescriptor, the guy behind it, is a close-minded asshole. So this is Absu. This is their self-titled from 2009. This is a really, really great record. The musicality on this is absolutely top-notch.
Great record.
The riffs are super complicated, but yet everything is kind of stitched together in such a way where there is like a definitive flow throughout it. The performances are all amazing. No matter if you play an instrument at all, you're going to be intrigued by some of the decision making that went into the structure of these songs. I just love the riffs. They are really, really, really tightly played, and and very very clean. And a lot for underground metal, it's like production's too clean or whatever. And for something like Absu, if you're a fan of like their other albums too, like Terror and stuff like that, I think a good production for a very technical, thrashy Black Death riff is a good thing, because that sort of precise picking and chord progression changes, palm meaning. I think you kind of want to hear that when you hear this much technicality going into the music. Prescriptor's vocals are great and harsh, and he's a shrieker on this. His drumming is fantastic. I don't get tired of this record, and I'm a huge Absu fan, and I'm really sad that now I can't listen to them without thinking about what a dick he made of himself for making that call and not being supportive of someone that he was playing music with. So that kind of bugs me a lot, but it's in the same way when I listen to Burzum, I was trying to not think about how much of an idiot and asshole he is. Like I just try to think about the music, and so music is personal stuff aside. And it is really a great Black Death record. And if you haven't listened to Absu, it's a great place to start. This was like a trilogy. There was Absu, then Apsu, and Asbu, or some shit like that. Yeah, I don't remember, but anyway, it was part of that trilogy, and it was really good. And so yeah, if you're into like a technical Black Death thrash kind of a thing, which I know that's a lot of descriptors, but actually Absu delivers on every one of them. This is a great record for that, and really anything I'd say from the one that follows this album back, you can't go wrong with Absu. It's good stuff. And
Terra's my favorite. That is a perfect record.
Terra is amazing. I mean, again, and what the production there. It's not as in your face as on this one. Obviously, it's a much older album, but it's clean and it's precise. And that's the way they play. They play that way. So I think that clean and precise production in this sense for this kind of style of metal helps you to appreciate it more, because you can really understand the skill or dedication to the craft that comes into it. And so yeah, Terra is another great example. And there's so much complexity when you listen to that, like, oh my god, like how are they playing these riffs and playing them so cleanly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really amazing and makes me want to not play guitar anymore. So.
Chop them all up and throw them in the dump. Yeah. Set them on fire. All right. Wait. Yeah. Kellen.
Okay. So I see Melanie's in the chat. So this one will go out to her. When I was pulling out some choices this week, I kind of thought about like bands that you go through this phase of kind of getting to know, then you kind of let them drift. And then you look through your shelf one day and you realize you haven't pulled it out in a long time. You're kind of curious as to how it'll sound. So this is Cattle Decapitation, The Harvest Floor. So for the longest time, like this, when I saw the album cover, I think it's Hugh Manure, the guy's like falling out of the cow. Like it kind of seemed a little bit like a shtick to me, right? Like, and the narrative was interesting at the time. This band that's like at the time the kind of ex-Locust members doing a gore death metal project that's kind of vegan. Like the story was probably more interesting than the music for me. And I heard, so that's I feel to like for me personally, I did not connect with Hugh Manure. Then the album that followed, Karma Bloody Karma, was just a mess. Like I absolutely could not get with that record. But when I heard The Harvest Floor, it felt like everything came together for that band. And I think it's really interesting because the inclusion of the drummer, I think his name is Dave McGraw. I'm sure Melanie will correct me here.
Quick Draw. Do they call him Quick Draw for short? Quick
well
Draw
done. Look at that. Quick draw on the jokes tonight with
I got to step up. I got to bring the dad jokes.
When you're hosting without Alan, you got to come correct.
I got to come correct. Exactly. Yeah. I don't have any props, so I have to bring my dad humor.
I think I've got my umbrella hanging around here from Wednesday night. But I think like it's just a very like odd band, and I still feel that way. But when I was listening to it in the lead up to this evening, I gained a certain amount of like, hey, I remember what that tech death momentum of the 2000s felt like. And Josh's guitar tone for me is so much more rooted in like post-hardcore than it is death metal. There we go. We're lasting like McGraw. We're stuck with something.
I like Quick Draw better, but yeah. I can go with Tim McGraw too. That's pretty good.
But yeah, like Travis's vocal style is also super strange. Like he has you can tell that he wants to sing as opposed to be like a death metal vocalist to me. Like his phrasing doesn't follow the same sort of like punctuation that I traditionally feel with a death metal vocalist. But it was like in their previous record, as chaotic and unorganized and like a mess of ideas that one sounds, it feels like everything sort of it comes to a clearing on this record, and they develop a bit of a band identity. So,
Oh, Tom. Everybody, Tom's going to be on next week. We're going to be doing a My Dying Bride deep dive next Friday. Tom from Sin Arcadia.
So anyway, a pleasant surprise, and like I have not, whatever sort of animus I had built towards this band, it was a cool sort of like, you know, melting my icy sort of visage listening to that and being sort of less harsh about, you know, my memory of what that era had become. So
I got to say, that band I never gave two craps about until it might have been Zoller. He sent me in a box of stuff their latest album, Death Atlas. Man, that album clicked with me big time. I couldn't get over how great it was. I loved the pseudo goth vocals on it. He's singing really weird. I loved it. And then Noah, who's in the chat, he gave me a copy of Anthropocene Extinction, which is really, really good too. I'm like, wow. And they even played here in Travers, like a mile from my house. And I watched them and I'm like, they're okay. I just don't care. But hearing those two records, they were kind of the like, okay, I'll find their albums cheap. I'll pick them up.
It's one of those things where like, I truly think it is their later part of their career is when they finally kind of get it together. And to your point, like he has that, like, I don't know how to describe it. He's trying to sing in key, but like adding some sort of aggressive sort of aspect to his vocals. It's an odd band, but for sure, like after the Harvest Floor, I really feel like they found themselves.
Yeah. All right. That's me, isn't it? Holy crap. Okay. This is my last pseudo commercialish one, but this is a big one. I believe this is the last thing Ronnie James Dio ever sang on. I'm not entirely certain. Other than maybe the Pick a Destiny soundtrack, but Heaven and Hell. What the hell's the name of this? I can't remember. The Devil You Know. I gotta admit, this album is really good. It's really doomy in spots. The riffs are very Sabbath. I mean, there's no denying that. Iommi's a riff merchant. And Dio sounds great on this record. He just does. Adam and Evil, Bible Black. That's the single off this. This is a great record. Maybe gets a little long towards the end, but for a guy as old as he was, and I mean, he was doing doo-wop stuff back before, you know, metal was even metal. And to go out and still have his voice intact, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Most singers blow out their O-rings over the years and just can't keep up. But he never sang out of his range, which I think is why he was able to maintain his vocals. He never pushed it like Bruce. I mean, you listen to Live After Death. I know people throw garbage at me for saying this. That's at the end of a very long tour. And Bruce sounds completely fried and burnt out on that record to me. I mean, it's still great. I love it. It's a classic live record. But even when you watch it, he's like throwing his arms up, trying to hit those high notes that just aren't there because he fried them. I can't believe Bruce can even still sing like he can now. But Dio was an absolute national treasure. And, you know, team up with his Black Sabbath comrades on here. This is great. It was destined for greatness. I don't think it got the accolade that it deserved, mainly because it's, again, kind of a heavy doomy record. Sabbath got that shot in the arm at the end when they reunited with Ozzy on that 13 record, which people hate. I don't hate it. I enjoy it. I listened to that album for probably 3 weeks straight when I got it. I thought it was great. I haven't touched it since, but it is basically an exact replica of their debut. I mean, starting even with the Thunder and the Rain. I mean, it's ridiculous how much they tried to. You got the harmonica song. I mean, all that shit. Rick Rubin said, you need to make your first album again, and they did. But this was good. Great to hear Dio go out on top still. Great. Good stuff. 2000.
The cover art is amazing on that too.
Yeah, it's really atypical. Really atypical. Yeah.
It's super evil. I love it.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, it is. It is, Wade. It is better than. I enjoyed 13 because I like the first Sabbath record, and Ozzy sounds good on it. Some of the songs rock. Is it? They were trying to appease the fans. They didn't write a great challenging record, but they wrote a safe record, and it's okay. Jim.
All right, this is one of my favorite death metal albums of all time. I wish I had it on vinyl, but it's expensive and I'm cheap, so I just got the CD. But it's Funebrarium.
That's a great record.
Morbid
Sleep of
Dreams.
Morbid Dreams. Yeah.
This album absolutely crushes from start to finish. Every riff is amazing. The vocals are awesome. I mean, the drumming on this. I mean, I don't care if I'm driving my mom to a hospital appointment. I'm going to be banging my head at the wheel. If this album is on, all you're going to see is a flurry of white hair flowing around everywhere. That is the instant.
My shirt. I need to get my titties out for this.
Oh yeah. Marty's right. Shirt's going to come off. A fire's going to get started somewhere. It's going to happen. This right there, this and For Victory are albums that absolutely just take control of me, and I turn to a madman. I really wish everything else rather that they did was as good as this. Their stuff, it's all good, but just nothing comes close to this one.
No, it's great,
and I think it's perfect from start to finish. Now I think isn't it one or two guys from Evoken on this? Yeah,
there's some dudes in Disma on that too.
Yeah, and Evoken is my favorite doom band, funeral doom band. So I mean, it kind of makes sense that the sound, the guitar sound, appeals to me so much. I mean, the bass is distorted and mean, like the guitars are low and just sound like they're coming up from the murky depths of hell. I mean, and I was telling the guys earlier, because that's how much I love this record. I was already talking about it before we started. I even love the sample at the beginning, like the most notorious dealers in death. I'm like, they knew it, man. They knew what they had. They're like, we're going to put out this, and it's going to steamroll every other motherfucker out there, dude. And they were right. That's why they put that sample on there. They knew this shit was going to crush skulls, man. And it absolutely does. If you have not heard this, do not sleep on this. If you don't listen to anything else I recommend tonight, get this if you love death metal. Funebrarium, Sleep of Morbid Dreams. Absolute stunner of a record. Love it. And maybe my cheap ass needs to get the vinyl. Yeah, I know. All right.
Yeah.
I put that in the chat and I spelt it completely wrong. So just so you know, I'm at the point of White Claw consumption where I'm not thinking so smart anymore.
I mean, I think for me, like when I heard that the Evoken, there were members from Evoken in that, it always, because like their brand of funeral doom is like right on this precipice, right? It's like not your typical funeral doom. And it's like, we want to do some doom death kind of death metal, but we're going to keep it funeral. I just felt like Funebrarium was like, they finally took the step, right? And they're like, yeah, we're going to do a death metal kind of sound, right?
That EP before it is pretty doomy though.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could even say like 2000, this comes out in 2009. How many bands in the now 14 years since its release are playing in this style?
All of them.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Doing it this well with this sound, with this atmosphere, with this crush. No, right. Not even close.
Right. It was, and I think it was a unique sort of moment in death metal history where like that return, that interest in a sound like this, they capitalized on the moment, and made an amazing death metal record for sure. I pulled that as well, but I'll just chime in there with my 2 cents. But yeah, awesome record.
Yeah, Tim, I already threw out the Green Bean Casserole reference. So if Alan was here, he would have started off on a tangent for sure. But these guys are kicking ass, so we're good. Alan, if you're watching, cheers, brother. Hope everything's good. Kellen's next.
I am. Okay. Speaking about seizing a moment. So just like you could say, you could Cattle Decapitation is at this point like just peaking. This band releases their debut full length, and for me, it was like a slow descent ever since then. Now, This is Tribulation's The Whore.
That's their best album. It's very thrashy.
It's
Sorry,
super
go ahead.
thrashy, comes out. An awesome death metal record. I still, it's one of those releases. I love the guitar tone on this album. It just, the level of sort of like primitive, early death metal kind of sound on this release immediately grabbed my attention. And similar to like, well, it doesn't sound anything as doomy as the, Brahm we were just talking about. Tribulation did have this, like, we're just going to do something very simple and basically well established, but do it really well. And in a lot of ways, like, I think whether you like their sort of rock goth stuff that has come after, opinions may vary, but in terms of like a true death metal release, like, this is awesome. I was trying to think, maybe you guys have better ideas, like in terms of a similar narrative. It's not just like their early records were their best, but like they also so dramatically changed with time. Like, I was thinking maybe like Therion's a good example. Like, they start off doing some death metal stuff, and by the end of their career, it's completely something different. But they're a death metal band that kind of follows that path. And just, I mean, you could say in one hand that because they went sort of the goth route, they didn't get bogged down in a lot of the OSDM sort of whatever, how saturated that scene is. But I do think in 2009, they're one of the first bands to really sort of help launch that. So I for people who are into that sound or trying to retrace the history of younger bands who helped energize the scene, The Whore is definitely one that you should be listening to.
All right. I'll show a piece of vinyl this time. We did a recent dive on the Wednesday Album Club for this band. This is his comeback album. Beharit Engram came out in 2009. This is a great return to form after two very ritualistic, we'll say, synth records. I've got them both. They're okay. They're just kind of boring. But this, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think this, I think a couple of the dudes from Kraft, the two guys from Kraft helped out on this, but it sounds like Beharit. Nuclear Holocausto sounds awesome on it. Vocals are great. The riffs are still super simple, but super catchy. There's more growth and progression musically on here than there was on Drawing Down the Moon. I like Drawing Down the Moon. It's just a very primitive juvenile record with some cool ideas. This is just a really well-written record. It starts off with "Because I just fucking hate this world," or "hate this fucking world," or whatever. And then it starts out, it's great. It's just so cool. Such a great record. After this, I think he's got a new album out. I think it's back to synth again. I don't know for sure. I just haven't been able to keep up, but this, I think, would be a great place to start with Beharit. Yeah. Oath of Black Blood. That's their debut. People hold it in very high regard. It's basically a couple demos sandwiched together. It sounds like ass. Drawing Down the Moon is great. Classic, regarded as a classic, very primitive, but experimental with the synth work. Kind of bonkers. This here is just a little bit more normal black metal, I guess, for the year it came out, and just catchy and simplistic. Really good album. Check out Engram by Beharit. Svart reissue. All right. Who's next? Jim. I gotta pee again. I'll be right back.
All right. So gonna go with Immortal, All Shall Fall.
Oh, you bastard.
See, that's what happens when you go pee, man. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure we're all familiar with this. Ben's probably spinning in his grave right now. I know he hates later Immortal, loves the earlier stuff. I kind of like all eras, and I really love the riffing on this. Abath, however you want to say his name. I think he's got a great like balance between. He kind of like, I think he really achieved like this perfect balance of like thrash and black metal riff styles all together on this. And throughout the album, it's like there's like alternate picking, but then that kind of like all 6-string sweep, like hitting the chords of but then it followed by the alternate picking, and that's kind of like all the way through the record. And so for me, being an old thrash kid and a black metal fan, that's a kind of almost like a perfect style of guitar playing for me, because it's unlike some black metal, it's not a thin guitar sound. It's thick, but still like it's still black metal, but with like a kind of a thick sort of a thrash metal attack on the playing here. And Apollyon plays drums on this, and really that's one of my favorite things about this record is Apollyon's drumming, because he throws in again, I keep saying it, like some old like very familiar kind of like, and not on the fast blasty stuff, but when they're going mid tempo or slower tempo, there's some like callbacks to like old thrash albums on here, like like on the first track, I think it's the very first track, halfway through when they go halftime, Apollyon has this like tom work, it's kind of reminiscent of like Hell Awaits a little bit, and and again for someone,
Jim, I don't want to. Apollyon plays bass on the record. Horg is on drums.
Horg, okay, whatever, same difference. No, I was kidding. Whatever the guy's name is.
I didn't want you to go too far there. I wasn't sure that was right, so I just wanted to double check.
Yeah. Sorry, I got their names mixed up. Let me look at this here. What am I looking at? Hold on. Be right back. Yep, you're right. Sorry, Horg. Yep. Okay, I'm an idiot. But anyway.
Apollyon plays drums, though. Yeah. He does play drums as well. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, he plays drums in
R Noir. Yeah.
R Noir. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, but anyway, the drums that Horg plays, very kind of like, like it's stuff that kind of makes you want to bang your head. You know what I mean? That kind of era of like metal, when it was like kind of all about that, and I think it's a good color, for this music. I know Peter Cochran produced this, which a lot of people hate that, because he's known for kind of cleaning things up, but maybe a little too much. But I don't know, man. I despite all that sort of like more modern touch, and the production and the songwriting, I still really, really like this record. I can play it all the way through, and it's great. Is it pure Holocaust? No. But taking it for what it is, I think it's a really solid album front to back.
Dude, I have to agree with that 100%. And I would say I liked Damned in Black. I was really underwhelmed by Sons of Northern Darkness, which I know is sacrilegious to a lot of people. But this record there's like a feel of the older school coming in. The shit's a little faster, a little darker. I think, don't get me wrong, but I think Abat went and recorded his vocals at Studio Grieg Holland for this. I could be wrong. Wait, let me see. Yep, recorded at Abyss Studios and Grieg Holland Studios. So Pitton did the vocals, so they're trying to get back to their roots a little bit on this. I don't know. And it works. It just has an older, more atmospheric vibe to it. I love Pitton's atmospheric, roomy, that studio is just forever classic. But this is a great record. I thought this was a great return to form. I thought Sons of Northern Darkness was just not good. That song Tyrants, I hated that song. People love that song. I don't know what it was about that record, but this was a step back in the right direction for me. This was a great record. Good pick for sure. Kellen.
All right. So for everything, if you're someone who heard Jim describe that Funebrarum release, here's one more you can add to that pile. This record, not nearly as well known, or album as well known. This is from Mexico. This is Denial with Catacombs of the Grotesque. So drummer from Cenotaph joins this band. It is an everything that we described. The clouds darken, skies go black, right? World turns to ash, death metal band takes the stage, sort of deal. Yes, everything that's in that Funebrarum release, this Denial album captures. Enormous, heavy, like that turn of interest in terms of bands who were playing in a style that had less focus on instrumental prowess necessarily, and a whole lot more on size and incredible amount of weight. Unbelievable release, only full length. Check out Denial, Catacombs of the Grotesque.
Another thing we could say from Mexico, even though it wasn't written in Mexico, is Chasm put out the Far Seeing the Paranormal Abyssum. You might have that one in your stack too. I thought I had a copy of that. I don't. It's the only Chasm album I don't own. I had them in for distro. I had a bunch of them, and I oversold and I had to sell my copy. So great record. Chasm rules. Cenotaph rules. I'll have to check out that Denial. Sounds cool.
Yeah, man. Thanks for mentioning that. That sounds awesome. I got to check that out.
Okay, let's go this route. Speaking of Australia, people say these guys are sketch. If they are, sorry, I never thought they were, but I don't know. Drowning the Light, an alignment of Dead Stars. Out of the 1,500 Drowning the Light albums I own, this is probably my favorite. This is maybe their best moment. It's just really the perfect combination of really dark and well written, decent production. It's my favorite. I like the White Claws made me stupid. But they've got a lot of records, tons of stuff.
I like how you were leaning against it, Mark.
I was trying to get some osmosis.
Such love right there.
I was trying to get some osmosis juice off here yeah. Oh, he's definitely sketchy. Well, yeah, fuck me then. Sorry, but I really like this record. Always thought it was one of his best ones. Excellent, weird black metal from Australia. Good stuff. Dark, cult, evil. This is pretty well written stuff. Again, he's got some shit that isn't well written. It's pretty crappy, but this is good stuff. Excellent record. All right, Jim.
All right, so we've got Ignivimus. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Another Australian band, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Damn.
Another
What's
Australian
Simon?
band.
He's out record
That's
shopping.
right.
Right
That's right. I forget the title of this one. Yeah, Death Transmutation. It's pretty good stuff. I need to give it some more time. Like I haven't listened to it in a really long time, and I was checking this out, and so really, really dark death metal that you would expect, like a Nuclear War Now release kind of a thing. It has that sort of pervasive, just like pure unrelenting evil all the way through it. There's no let up. This isn't like this is definitely no mosh, no fun, kind of death metal right here. You know what I mean? You'll not want to be in a darkened room listening to this unless you want to get suicidal. It's that kind of death metal. It's probably not my typical like go-to in terms of style, but if you're wanting something a little different and just something that just oozes evil, like I think Ignivimus Transmutation is a good example of that. And any of you guys who hear me talk about metal on Metallurgy Nights knows that I love distorted bass, and the distorted bass on this is godlike, man. It is massive. It's not just distorted and up in the mix, but it also has tons of bottom end. Like it'll warp your speakers if you crank it up, and I love that. I think the production on this is one of my favorite things about this. It's nice and dreary. Yeah, someone said reminiscent of Order from Chaos. I think that's a great way to describe this. So I need to sit with this one some more. Like it kind of fell off my radar, but coming back to it this week was an interesting ride. So. Yeah, if you like your death metal just as black and dark as you could possibly get, and with a lot of bass, yeah, Ignivimus, Death Transmutation, Australia. This is the one. Sorry about all the glare, guys. I'm trying to stop that. I'll learn from the masters to get better at it.
Yeah, when I first heard that, Jim, I almost thought I was listening to like a power electronics record initially. Like, or if someone had just taken a bunch of, glass bottles and broke them inside of the actual amp, like
I totally get what you're saying. Like, it makes perfect sense to me. Yeah,
there's every time I hear that, every time I hear that record, there's a really bad action movie with Van Damme. I think it's called Kickboxer, where they go into a fight scene and they like break glass and put their fists in it, and they're going to get into a duel.
Yeah. Isn't that Bloodsport?
It's a terrible movie, right? But,
yeah.
but the scene is like, anyway, the guitar tone on that record always reminds me of that scene, just because it's so harsh.
It's very harsh. Yes.
In the same way that you would like caustic, like in the same way you would listen to like almost sounds war metalish because of the guitar tone.
Exactly. Yep.
Like you mentioned, being on Nuclear War Now. When Marty describes listening to war metal sounds like putting his head inside of a jet engine, like I totally get that vibe on that record. It's just so blistering.
Absolutely, it's punishing for sure.
Yeah, but the way they're
what's up, Brian?
Yeah, Brian knows what's up.
Yeah,
he's seen all those old Van Damme action flicks. But yeah, it's one of those records that is like, the first thing I associate with it is just the production of the guitar work. If some records will live and die on their sound alone, there's probably better songs written within their catalog that come later, but none of them have that like immediate effect of just like, I sort of pull back from whatever I'm listening to when I first listen to it because of how rough it is. So.
Yeah, that in much the same way when I listen to Titan Blood, how I'm just like distressed the entire time. Like, that's what this record.
I don't get the fascination with that Titan Blood. People love it, man. I've heard a couple.
I wouldn't say I love it. I like this more than Titan Blood. I think it's a little. I can grasp this some more. I think Titan Blood is like borderline a noise album, and not noise as a insult. A noise as a genre description. You know what I mean? But I just mean in the same way that it's that unsettling for me. You know what I mean? But for what now? But now, just makes me want to listen to it some more. I'm probably going to listen to it again tomorrow. So.
Right. Titan Blood's first album also in 2009. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Nice.
All right.
I'm guessing Marty didn't pull that one though.
Nope.
Okay.
Not on the. I might have it, but I never listened to it. Anyway.
Okay. Well, I'll have to check out Kickboxer 5. That sounds.
I'm sure it's great. It's like Jason in Space 10. I mean, whatever. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's move on to. I'll do just a couple. Sort of thrash releases to talk about. So this one's actually probably a good one to pair with Jim's Absu. So this is the first release from Scythian. I believe they're English, entitled "To Those Who Stand Against Us," but their sound is also very much like in that weird intersection between death metal, black metal, and thrash. Like, all of those are alive and well on this project. I think the members now have turned into Craven Idol, which is another, I don't know if they're on Dark Descent, but
they are, I think you're right.
But this record, what makes it unique is, yes, you have that like background of whatever Absu's got going on, but they also integrate a little bit of like Bathory, like Viking era Bathory. So there's these sung sort of choral arrangements and acoustic guitar work that enter into the sound. It kind of blew me away the first time I heard this record. It just is well done. It's not like they're not trying to exploit the Viking stuff to the extent where it becomes like too much of a cliche. It's just an interesting sort of addition to this sound. And then it's really well executed, sort of like whatever death black thrash stuff. But that when it opens up and you get these sort of big open spaces for that Viking stuff to breathe. It's a nice little dynamic shift. I think they have one other release that came out in 2015-ish, and since then I think they've pretty much split up and focused on other projects. But this Scythian release is, for one, definitely check this out if you're into Absu and potentially wanted something like a little bit different in terms of a intense or brutal thrash record that offers a little bit of Viking stuff going on.
Peter says Alex from Macabre Omen was on in Scythian at that Macabre Omen stuff is awesome. Good albums.
It is, yeah. I agree.
Okay. I picked this record because it's a good record, but it's not the one I thought it was going to be. I thought it was The Code is Red, Long Live the Code, but this is a good one too. Napalm Death's Time Waits for No Slave. They had a really good run for me. Smear Campaign, The Code is Red, Long Live the Code, and this one. This one's also really good. There's like a 3-album trilogy of Napalm that is just really, really well produced. The songs have a lot of punch and give and take to them, a lot of dynamics, a little bit more of a punk. Smear Campaign's my favorite of the three, but this is a good record. It had to be mentioned. I don't talk about Napalm much. I don't listen to Napalm much, but when I do, it's this one and the two before it. Code is Red, Long Live the Code, and Smear Campaign. I mean, they're not reinventing the wheel. They got a little more experimental as they went on. Then there was also the whole Diatribe fiasco. I hated that. Super groovy. I don't know. I just didn't get it. But, yep, I don't listen to a lot of Napalm these days. It's just kind of a band that... I don't want to say we're out there welcome because that's a shitty thing to say. I'm still glad they're kicking ass, but I just don't really care anymore. Utilitarian was the last one I picked up, and I listened to it twice. I'll probably never listen to it again, but this is good. This is a good era for the band for me. Jim.
Okay, so I don't pick these guys up often, but this is Marduk's Wormwood from 2009. Dude from Funeral Mist was singing on here, and I really like that dude's. I forgot his name. What's his name, Marty?
Of what? I was reading the chat. I wasn't listening.
Marduk.
Mortem or
yeah, forgot now.
Hold on a second. I'll tell you.
It's really bad that Mortuous,
something like that.
Yeah, however you pronounce it. Anyway, I always loved his vocals, just kind of twisting and turning, like almost like he's like throwing up with his mouth closed, kind of vocals, like I've always just kind of been truly bothered when I heard his voice, but in a good way. Like that's so weird. Like I just want to keep listening to it. Like Maranatha, if you know this Maranatha, like I love that record for that reason. Like it's just so weird to me, like his vocals all the way through. But anyway. Wormwood's really good. Marduk obviously is just kind of like, oh, pound, 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 pound. Okay, pound, 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 pound. And it gets a little boring after a while, I think, their albums. But this one, what I like about it is I know I'm kind of a broken record here, but there's a lot of there's a lot of bass breaks on this album where everything else stops and the bass plays. And again, it's distorted bass, great low tone, great frequencies, and it's really well played on bass lines too. They're not like super boring, simple, but not too complicated. It's not like it's prog. I mean, we're talking about straight black metal here. It's Marduk, you know what I mean? But really interesting bass lines, and they give them almost like, I would say, like half the songs. There's a moment where the bass is allowed to breathe. And you guys are probably wondering, Jim, did you play bass? You talk about bass a lot. Yes, I played bass in bands, guitar.
In the Glorious Dead.
In the Glorious Dead, I was the original one in Marty's band before I moved to Florida, which is what it is. But this is good stuff for that reason. I feel like there's a little bit more variety and tempo and stuff on this Marduk record than a lot of stuff that they put out. And, like I said, it's not a band that I'm super into, but I think this has got something special going on for it here. I feel like they kind of, stayed in their lane for sure, but kind of pushed into a little bit more like variety in the way that they presented their attack here. You know, letting different instruments breathe, and letting Mortuous like barf in his mouth like he always did. So,
Guys, I just threw up in my mouth.
put it on tape.
Record.
That's a good take, man. That's a good take. So anyway, yeah, not much to say, you know. But if you're, everybody's heard Marduk, but I think Wormwood is a great release by them in 2009. I think they kind of did something a little better than normal on this album.
Yeah, the singer's other band is Funeral Mist, for those of you who don't know. Oh, yep. Rick Canis Dearest' debut album came out in 2009 as well.
Oh, nice.
All right. Kellen.
All right. What do you want to say here? Probably one of the most more successful or high profile thrash bands of the era. This is Vector.
That album's so good, man. The one after it's my favorite, but that one's great.
Yeah, I mean, at thrash at this time, like this is at the 2000s. You know, I hate the term pizza thrash. It seems so derogatory.
But it nails it. It nails it. It nails
right.
Yeah.
Right. But like it was somewhere between like trying to capitalize on like, I don't know, Tankard and meets Exodus kind of playfulness. And you get a band comes around like Vector. And this just seems like an attempt to, yes, it was meant to be derogatory. It just seems like an attempt to put thrash at a level of like artistic achievement. I know that may sound pretentious, but like after being only something that was playful, to have a band come along and be like, we're taking this seriously and we really want to be part of like the best within the genre. I think that's what was so attractive for Vector when they first arrived. This release is probably the one that, I mean, it's the one that I own and the one that I've held on to.
Oh, you don't have the one after that? Oh boy.
I don't have Outer Isolation. No.
God, that album is the riffs on that record are so technical but so catchy. It's a miracle how they walk that line between technicality and super hooky. I don't know. It's great record. That one's great too. That one's got a little bit more of a black influence on it, more of a black metal influence, I think, here and there. But great stuff. Even though the other one, the last one, is really good too. Good band. All right. I am next. I'm getting kind of down on the stack here, but that's okay. I pulled this. This isn't my favorite Wolves in the Throne Room record. This is Black Cascade. This like Stoughton jacket. It's like thick as a manhole cover. We're talking about Cascadian black metal. These guys are kind of the leaders of it. You know, they're the ones that kind of put it on the map. The definitely the highest profile of the bands. A lot of the bands sound within this realm from that area. This is a good record. I like the album before it and the album after it, maybe a little bit better, but solid. I don't have a lot to say about this. It's, post black metal, if you want to call it that. Earthy, woodsy, atmospheric. I mean, it's a name that is pretty synonymous to the Cascadian sound, but Black Cascade, good stuff, good record. I would say the debut is probably my favorite. I don't know. It changes. I haven't spun them in a while though. I've kind of fallen out of favor with. I haven't spun them in a while. Just haven't gotten around to it, I guess. Jim.
Oh, let's see. So I'm gonna go with Finnish black metal guys, Azagol or Azagol, something like that. But,
that band is really good. I like the riffs.
The riffs are really good. Terrafilm. This is, and all. This album is a little more. I'd say a little more raw than some of their stuff, but still with like loads of like melodic atmosphere. Like the guys, the way he like the tempos are punishing. It's punishing black metal in that way, but the the synths that he uses has a lot of atmosphere, but not in an Emperor kind of way. Like they kind of just it's kind of its own thing. I really have a hard time explaining it, but yeah, the main guy behind it, what's his name, Marty? I always forget his name. He was in Weird as well.
Hold on.
Narcoth.
Yeah, Narcath or whatever.
Yeah. He's just a great. He's just a riff meister, and the riffs are very interesting, well put together. There's a great variety of tempos here. It's not, we were talking about Marduk, how it's punishing all the way through, like
Blast Furnace.
Yeah. There's definitely songs on here that are kind of like slower all the way through, more moody. Maybe sort of like in terms of like creating like that sort of spellbinding atmosphere, kind of like mid-period Burzum or something. But just a lot of intriguing like riff choices here, and the vocals. What's interesting about Narcoth's vocals is they are intelligible on the choruses half the time, and they're kind of like memorable. Like you even if you don't know what he's saying, like his vocal rhythms are very catchy, which is kind of it seems really strange for me saying this out loud, talking about a really raw black metal album, but yeah, there's a really the vocal rhythms that he comes up with that overlay the choruses. The songs are memorable and they kind of stick with you. And I hadn't played this in a long time, but getting ready for tonight, playing through this, I was like, I remember, I was like, oh yeah, like it all came back to me. It was very familiar, like really really quick. And so I think that's saying something to their songwriting, that they can craft vocal rhythms over such like harsh black metal where it doesn't just it doesn't fade into the background. You know what I mean? A lot of times black metal vocals just become a part of the wall of sound that's coming at you. And I'm perfectly fine with that. I love that about black metal, but here the vocals kind of stand on their own and they're not easily forgotten. So if you want to hear some cool finished black metal with like some interesting tweaks on the style, I recommend as all really very consistent discography. Like all the albums I have of them are good.
Yeah.
But this one from 2009 is definitely right up there with the best of them. So so something worth checking out. If you want to dive into some finished stuff.
Good pick, Kellen.
All right. This is a relatively short-lived project. This is the last release, but I think they're now split up. But Brown Jenkins with Death Obsession.
That's a very strange pick. Good call, though. All instrumental, right?
There's vocals on it.
Oh, is there?
But it is, a very dissonant, predominantly instrumental record. An interesting, like, what do you want to call this? Like
weird black. It's weird. It's black metal-ish.
Yes.
I don't know. It's weird. I have a couple of the releases. It's okay. I just haven't dug into it enough to. Yeah.
It's just like an interesting blend of like black death doom that was coming out at the time. Super strange stuff, but for someone who was listening to like the industrial area of Bluthaus Nord at the time, and I could make that transition to a record like this for sure.
Right.
So, I think when you had, I've talked at length about my interest with Bluthaus Nord, and I know the Memoria Vetusta Dialogue with the Stars is from this year, but because I spent 6 hours talking about that band, I didn't pull it tonight. But because like if people were into that sort of industrial area of the band, Brown Jenkins is definitely going to be a part of that conversation.
Awesome. Well, this is my last poll. It doesn't mean you guys have to be done. This is just, and I saved, I think, the worst for 2009 for last. I pulled this record because this record I thought sucked so bad I had to talk about it for a second. And that would be Candlemass Death Magic Doom. After The King of the Grey Islands, I was expecting another album of excellence. I thought Oh my God. Robert Lowe from Solitude Eternus coming in was a good fit. King of the Grey Islands, I think he sung his ass off. There's some amazing. I know people like this record. I feel like the only one. But I understand he came in on that record and another singer had wrote all the vocal harmonies for it. So all he had to do was come in and sing things that were already programmed for him. This record, it's him putting his own flavor on the music. And man, it's like he phoned it in, dude. It's like his vocal lines follow the riffs verbatim, which really bugs the crap out of me. The Bleeding Baroness is actually a pretty good song. The chorus is really good. Is this song with the Queen Bee on it? No, that's a different one. There's just a lot of really boring vocal. The music is solid. It's really okay. It's Candlemass, but Robert just kind of phones it in, follows the riffs verbatim. Not a lot of dynamics or life in this. I was really disappointed. I really enjoyed King of the Grey Islands, especially the title track. What a great song. And then the last song on the album's amazing. But yeah, this is poor Candlemass. And probably one of my more anticipated albums for this year. And this really let me down. I thought it was a drag. And I felt like the only one because a lot of people like this record.
Poor Candlemass.
Poor Candlemass. Failed again. Anyway, Jim.
All right, this is my last pick as well. And Marty's already talked about it, but I don't care. It's Woden's Throne. Woden's Throne's Lost for me. Just like Marty was saying, this is absolutely crushing UK black metal. Probably some of the best that ever came out of there. This was I discovered this along with Marty and Bindroom, and when I was like doing the deep dive into his releases, this was definitely a standout record for me, and to Marty's point, just like, a medieval, Britain, emperor is a great way to say it. You know what I mean? It has that sort of, depth of instrumentation going on, but there's almost something about Woden's Throne's Lost that I know it's going to sound strange, but it's almost soothing to me listening to this record. There's something about it, like, despite the fact that it's like, it's punishing and it's just a great wall of sound, and these guys really, really know how to create a vibe. But when the guy's like, I raise my fist to the cousin sky, I mean, it like you just want to. You want to just do the same. you want invisible oranges out.
Stupid clouds.
Stupid clouds. But it's really strange because as intense and emotive it is, it's also like it's very calming for me listening to this. So I this is another one of those records that I would recommend. Going if you're going on a hike through the woods or just sitting by a stream and just contemplating and, no one's around and you got some solitude going on. This Woden's Throne, man, Lost is a great album for that. You can really just, just get to yourself and focus on the music and be taken away. Like, it's hard to, there's a lot of like atmospheric black metal that you can kind of zone out to, like you can work to and all that kind of stuff. But when I listen to Woden's Throne Lost, I just want to pay attention. I want to be involved in the sound. I want to drift away in it. I don't want to be interrupted. I really like listening to this. I keep saying it, but listening to it alone is the way to experience this record. And it will cloud out the myriad voices in your mind that we're all trying to shut down to get through the day. Like this is an album that does that for me, and I suspect it will do it for you too. So highly recommend Woden's Throne Lost. Definitely one of Bindroom's best releases ever. So.
Kellen.
Okay. Well, I guess I have a little bit more to go here. So.
Oh, fine, dude. Go ahead. Seriously.
Okay. And I have I don't know if anyone can tell. There's a cat circling me. So here we go. Ahab, their second release, The Divinity of Oceans.
Mm-hmm. Good album.
I mean, their first two albums to me are Wretched Sea's amazing and one hell of a debut. This record is a little bit, I mean, no, I know it's Funeral Doom, but this is a little bit more melancholy for me. There's more sung vocals here. But beautiful, slow moving Funeral Doom. The album artwork, like, it completely tells the story. Perfect listen. I can't go. The first two Ahab records for me, I can't really lose. I love both of them. One of my favorite sort of Funeral Doom bands. Do you mean just keep rolling through these?
Keep on rolling.
Okay, so this is the Doom section of this for me. Next release, we're moving to Marty's favorite genre of music. This is drone, but Monoliths and Dimensions. Attila joins here for vocals, and I feel like all the stories, there could just be like a background. Jurgen's hanging out with
Story time with Jurgen. Yeah.
Story time with Jurgen. All the different party habits I have with your favorite bands in Germany. But this is my favorite Sun record. So a band that like,
can you call that a band?
An experience.
God, pretentious yawns to everyone. Anyway, go ahead.
There we go. There we go. I can't win. I knew I was going to pull this out. And Marty's going to be like,
no, go ahead, sell it. It's all good.
All right.
Get your umbrella out.
Yes. This for me, like this listen is the best within the catalog. I think increasingly became the vocalist change. Attila, his like eccentricity is perfect for this band. If there's any kind of vocalist you want to sort of get on the stage and make odd noises and a complete wall of drone and bass, this is going to be the one. There we go. Aaron's got my back. Thank you so much. The metal theologian to the rescue. All right, here we go. All right. Moving on. This is Abandon the Dead End. Swedish sludge. So this is a 2 CD release. So an hour and 45 minutes of sludge. That's right. But if you're a fan of like Thou, which is also coming around at this time period, a good one to check out. Really just punishing heavy listen, but there's giant organ arrangements on this, which also add for like a sludge listen is a great sort of addition, in addition to the keys on the record. So it's one that, similar to the Sun album, you kind of put on and just let it flow because it doesn't have the same kind of like pacing that you traditionally would get with a metal record. But I mean, it's almost 2 hours long, so buckle up, right? It's 2 CDs here, but an absolutely punishing, and it's the end of this career. They disbanded after this. So, but if you're into like where sludge went at this time period, Abandon's a good one to check out. They have an album that was released, I think their first one, this is their second album. First one was released in 2005, 2004. And to close out, I'm going to grab a trad record. So this is Ram. I don't know if are you familiar with this at all?
Not that one. I've heard a couple of their older ones. I don't own any of their stuff.
Yeah. So this is their second release entitled Lightbringer. But this band, so like Sweden at the time when there's these new traditional bands arriving, you have bands like Portrait and Enforcer. They've had a little bit of like that sound going on, but there's almost a level of like, I don't even want to call it, almost like a Man-O-War sound to this, where it's a very, whereas like Enforcer's very pretty, that's not the sound of Ram. So an early band in the new wave of traditional heavy metal that kind of gets things rolling. And by comparison to a lot of the other, their compatriots from Sweden, one that deserves recognition. So that's technically going to close my picks out. I know people in the chat were clamoring for Memoria Vetusta 2, Dialogue with the Stars. I still hold true that the work which transforms God is my favorite and probably the most important Blue Ausnord record.
Beast of Rebellion 2, very similar it's very dark and haunting and twisted and awesome. Love both of those records.
So my turn here is I think the work which transforms God does a better job. It's like a matured version of Beast of Rebellion.
I would agree. I would totally agree with that. Yeah.
This record,
that's my favorite album by them too, man. I love that record.
The Memoria Vetusta catalog does a bit more of your like traditional black metal flair, but I have to say this still is like in the same way that I will put on something like Anthems to the Welkin, and the first few notes I'm like completely transformed into a place and time. It is one of those hairs on the back of your head sort of stand up immediately records for me. I had the same experience when I listened to Dialogue with the Stars. I immediately connected with this record for an album that is sort of playing in a traditional black metal with a bit more of like a pagan, Scandinavian, Norwegian sound. It's still very much a Norwegian, like it's still rooted in that. A unique approach to guitar work. Some people may be sort of hesitant about the programmed drums. I think Jimmy talked about this when you had him.
Yeah. But not for black metal. Doesn't bother me in black metal. It just bothers me in death metals. But absolutely not. Blue Ausnord wouldn't be the same with real drums. I think that especially like you said, work that transforms God. I mean, to me, that is like black metal meets the most evil industrial that anyone could ever come up with. And I love that record from beginning. Procession of Dead Clowns, man. Like I feel like I'm like, carrying like a rickshaw and like someone's like, hitting me on the back, telling me to go faster. Like, when I listen to that song, I'm like, don't hurt me anymore, Blue House. but I just love it so much. It's so different, so unusual. And I think that for Blue Ausnord, the electronic drums add to that uniqueness, add to that, like, just like machine. It's like a machine hell when I listen to that record. And I love it. It's one of my all-time favorite black metal albums for sure. Yeah, I love it.
People are talking about Mort in the chat. I had that record and I gave it away because I love the earlier. I like this project, but that album sound like the same song over and over and over again. I saw very little differentiation between tracks. I thought it was really boring to me. I'm like, wow, this is just phoning it in to me. Weird. It's weird, dark and twisted, but all the songs sound exactly the same. I was not a big fan.
It's more of a dark ambient listen than it is anything else. And from someone who hates Sun, I completely get where you're coming from. Like for the same sort of reason, right? There's not
the
enough.
Guys in Sun are awesome.
Right.
I've hung out with Steven. Great dude. Right. I just, man, it seems like, I don't know. I'm not gonna say anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think about.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's not worth listening to musically. It's just, I don't know. Vintage gear and high decibels.
The album, the black one, that one, I think Rest from Leviathan is on it.
No, it's the dude from Zaster.
I think Rest is on that one too, man.
He might be. They both might be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're both on that one. But yeah, that one, you can actually kind of like sleep that one. But
yeah.
I mean, you'll have
the black one. Let's see here. Line up. Yeah, it does. I can't. MK Ultra Blizzard and Mystic Fog Invocator. That tells me that's just those two.
What about?
Rest is on it. Rest is on it. Malefic from Zaster's on there.
Zaster, yeah.
And a couple other dudes. Yeah. Well, I gotta say, when Kellen the other day said, "Let's do 2009," I'm thinking, what? What? Why? What was so great about 2009? But
I didn't think I'd have this much. I was like, 2009, I'm surely don't have that much stuff, but actually dug out more than I thought. Though someone called out the Arcanum, and I can't believe both of us missed that, Marty, because I know we both have it.
I have it, but I like the album that came after it better.
Well,
Fenris
it's not
Kid.
about that. It's about the year, man.
I know, but
2009.
no one mentioned World Painted Blood. Slayer after Seasons in the Abyss. Divine Intervention. After Divine Intervention, I stopped caring about them.
I actually made it up to Christ Illusion, but I really don't like World Painted Blood. That was the end for me. I bought that. I listened to it one time, and okay, I was like, okay, I guess they're done now. You know what I mean? But yeah.
But you know,
go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, seriously.
Oh, I was gonna say, Christ Illusion really only has a couple good songs though. The title track and Jihad, which was written by Hanneman, that song is it's awesome, man. He definitely took the controversial perspective of a jihadist and that. So lyrically, riff wise, everything that song is a stunner. That was like a little bit of the old Slayer coming back. So if for later Slayer, if you haven't heard that one song, check it out. Christ Illusion, Jihad, a last hurrah from Hanneman there. So anyway, go continue, Mark.
No, I was just gonna say in closing, it doesn't matter what year it is. I mean, I laughed that Kellen picked 2009. I'm thinking, what's so great about 2009? But going through the list, being friends with a lot of people on Facebook, there's always someone that says this year sucked for metal, or every year there's somebody every year, and I always have to think to myself, they're not working hard enough to look, because every year is a good year for metal. It really is. There's great albums coming out everywhere. You just have to have your ear to the ground. You got to work. If you're just waiting for Metallica to put out a good record, or name Ghost. I mean, whoever. It doesn't matter. If you're only digging into the popular stuff, yeah, you might be disappointed. But if you have a diverse taste of metal that you listen to, there's something good coming out in all subgenres of it, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what do you guys think?
For sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Kellen.
One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given when, it was almost paraphrasing what you said, but like, there's always good music. You just aren't looking hard enough. Like, yeah. I think that's something that's consistent, especially now. There's very little excuse for you to not be able to find something. So yeah, I do appreciate, however, like, I knew when I threw out 2009, I was probably going to get a little bit of like, huh? So I was happy to see both of you were so sort of like open-minded to handle a year that probably, when you think about 2009 and your, over the course of your lifetime and where you were and with your collecting, is not so iconic, but you kind of met me halfway, and I was thankful for that. So thank you for entertaining my my year of choice. No,
it was great. Jim, you had something to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're looking for innovation in metal, you just have to you got to dig, man. You got to get, I think that most of the innovation, most of it, not all of it, but most of it happens in the underground. You know what I mean? If you're wanting to hear, what is going to be palatable to the mainstream metal fan 5 years from now, it's already brewing underground. And there are new sounds to embrace and behold. And and I'll even admit here lately, I've just been listening to a lot of old stuff. I haven't been digging as much as I used to, especially when we were writing Worm Gear. I still get sent promos, but I honestly don't listen to them. I needed to change that. But
yes, you do, especially if you want to start doing reviews.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But the reality was, the great thing about it was that whole time period when we were doing wormgearzine.com was my realization. I was like, here is all this ingenuity that I've been looking in metal. It's all there. It's all there in the underground. And so for anyone to say, like, metal is dead or whatever, to you guys' point, you're just, and I think North Rocky said it perfectly. You're not digging deep enough to find the bodies. That is exactly the truth. You need to dig enough. and because it's there. There's something new and cool and brewing, or at least a twist on what's come before. You just got to put the time and the effort to find it. And I mean, what the hell else you gonna do, man? Go find some good music. I think that's a good task to set for yourself and to set for myself. I got to stop just. It's easy to return to the classics, but I need to push myself too. So I'm pointing the finger at myself as well. We should all be doing that. So,
and honestly, Project's got a good point here. The fact that I look at every year, and the problem is that there isn't a lot of bad metal. The problem is a lot of bands are doing good releases. That's the problem. There's too much good. There isn't a lot of great. It's all at least good. I mean, a label that puts out a record, typically it's competent. It's typically well written. Is it original? Maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of factors at play, but I think the bigger problem is there's just a lot of good metal out there, and it's too much. It's a little overwhelming, and it kind of lowers the bar. You know what I mean? It's like there needs to be more peaks. There needs to be more like wow factor, and not in a way that's like crazy and overly technical or super bonkers. It is. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It just seems like even the stuff that I listen to, I might not like. It's still good. It's just maybe not my taste, but it's still good. And anybody that says that metal's dead, they're not even scratching the surface. I'm not trying to sound jaded. It's kind of a compliment. I mean, there's so many. Metal is one of those genres that there's fans, people that don't play instruments, but it's kind of one of those genres that inspires people to pick up an instrument and try. And I think that's cool. I think that's really cool about it. But I think there's a lot of fans that are connected, in different ways, and musically. They're musicians as well. In the affordability of recording gear these days, and there's recording apps on your phone. It's easy to make music now if you've got the time. But yeah, the bar needs to be raised. I think there's so many good, there just needs to be great. And there are great. There's great. I can live with good. Good is good. But I hear a lot more good and okay than bad these days. And it all boils down to if it's appeals to me. I don't know. Is that something you guys want to chew on for a second, or all good?
I mean, I guess what I would say is I, to some degree, feel like I would like to hear what someone who's I don't know how. I think Logan's right in there. I think he's in his 20s, right? I could be wrong. Logan, correct me if you're wrong.
Logan's in here?
I'm wrong. Yeah,
I didn't see him.
Isn't Drunken Metalhead Musings? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there he is. Duh. I saw it now. Sorry.
I constantly feel like I'm sort of self-evaluating my own like bias here. For example, I'm never going to feel the same way that you felt about listening to Holy Terror. Like, as much as I can pull that out and listen to it and love it, I'm not from that time period, and it won't connect with me, right? In the same way.
There was so much average thrash, good, but average thrash, and you hear Holy Terror.
Right.
It's like a step beyond that was the wow moment. That was what really drove that band home instantly.
Right.
First seconds of that tape. Crazy.
Right. So for example, I think it's unfair, right? As much as I can't connect in the same way that you do with that record, it's also probably unfair for me to ask that you connect with something like Ulcerate's Everything is Fire in 2009, like I pulled out in the same
It's
way.
great. I've heard later Ulcerate. It's
right.
It's great stuff.
But does it make you like scream like your hair's on fire, right? Like,
no, because I've heard Obscura.
Right. Well,
I've seen them play, songs from Obscura live.
What I'm trying to say is, like, I think everyone will enter at a different point in time and probably establish a different kind of emotional connection based on, when they arrive with a certain record. And I think I'm constantly feeling like, to some degree, like I pointed out tonight, I started at some level feeling a bit jaded at this point in my life towards some sounds. Like I had really exhausted a lot of interest on kind of the technical side of death metal by 2009. Like I kind of had felt, and I think a lot of people felt the same way. You know,
dude, technical death metal hits me the same way war metal does.
Sure.
It's a similar voice. It's the same. It's the same. They're coming from the same box of crayons.
Okay. So,
You know.
But like when I was 16 and listening to Deeds of Flesh, you know, it was very different than when I was 25 in 2009 and listening to it. Like I wanted something different, which is why when you put on Funebrarum, it's like, oh my God, like a complete turn, right?
Yep.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is like I'm constantly evaluating how I have my own sort of shortcomings and bias in terms of perspective, and how I feel about something today. Like right now, I want a technical death metal release or something like that, just to break up the monotony of what I consistently am exposed to. So when I listened to the Cattle Decapitation record, something I'd kind of soured on in 2009, to pull it off the shelves in here in 2023 and listen to it kind of felt refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, right, my opinions, and just like I'm sure both of you, it's not static. They're constantly sort of evolving. And you were burnt out on Halloween for how long? And we couldn't get Halloween off of the show for 3 years, right?
It's still. Yeah,
right?
I wasn't burnt out on it. I just didn't check in with it.
Right.
I didn't check in with the Darius era. And once I did, I was like, holy shit, what? I'm an idiot for missing this.
Sure. Or you were completely into like extreme black metal in the 90s.
That too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so listening to Halloween in 95, absolutely not. But now I'm going back and discovering it. I'm sure
I listen to them every day still. I just do.
I'm sure Jim has a similar, like, I don't know, like, do you have an experience like that where you sort of shift and you came back to a record or a sound or?
Oh man, definitely. You know, like, you know, what led me to, like, I was late to black metal. I through the 90s, I was listening to, you know, I never stopped listening to death metal, or thrash, but I was listening to also, because I was at the time, and I was in a mainstream metal band, so I was listening to a lot of mainstream metal too, and which I know it seems hard to believe, but I was. And then I started getting tired of all metal, death metal, mainstream, everything, and I just completely missed the boat on black metal. I was like, I'm going to go to black metal. It's the only genre I haven't embraced. And I dove in completely, man. And I stopped listening to everything else. I was just listening to black metal for years. And when I met Marty, it was like the perfect storm. Here's a guy who owns a black metal label. I'm like, great, give me more. And so we just like continued on that journey together. And it really wasn't, you know, until I met Marty, and that I started kind of walking back towards death metal again, walking back towards thrash again, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, because I just, and black metal was so new to me, and I loved it, and I wanted a different experience. But, you know, it's all come back full circle. Like now I'm listening to death metal more than black metal again. You know what I mean? So it comes and goes. I had reached my saturation point. Like, what else is there? What else is there? And I was like, you know, crying out for something that was just kind of turned me on my head. And so that was that transition for me. But here I am, back listening to, you know, 90s death metal again all the time, you know. And just like I said the other night, I'm like, oh, that's nice, I'm gonna go listen to Convulse now. You know, you know, I mean, and so, you know, I gotta like get myself back into what's going on right now in the modern era again, because I've sort of lost myself. So yes, it ebbs and flows. My obsessions with genres ebbs and flows, but I think that's part of the journey. I mean, that's what's great about it. There's a lot of bad things about the human experience. What's great about it is, you know, getting tired of things forces you to challenge yourself, forces you to grow, you know, and, you know, and I dismissed black metal.
And it forces you to diversify. It forces you to diversify your collection.
It does. And then, you know, and the more you diversify, the more you challenge yourself, the less likely that sort of like running away from what you love will happen for such a long period of time. So, so now I'm kind of in that place where even if I don't get it right away, I'm going to keep trying to get it. Cause I want to see, maybe, you know, maybe it's me, maybe, you know, I'm my ears are too jaded to really embrace something that's new. I'm going to push myself, and I think that's where real growth comes. And Marty and I have talked about this many times. It's those albums that challenge you the most that a lot of times end up becoming your favorites and the ones you go back to, because those are the ones you hear something new every time. You know, if there's something to be said for comfort, and I love that, and love hearing familiarity, but you know it, for something to really kind of like, you know, scratch that itch that you need, you know, to, you know, get out of bed in the morning and to get excited. I mean, you know, that's, you need something challenging for that, you know. So I think I talked in the circle there, but hey.
No, it's all good. No, well said though. Yeah. Anybody have anything else? It was a fun way to end it, I think.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Yeah.
Appreciate everybody's comments. It was great interacting with everyone. This has been an awesome Friday. Really enjoyed it. So, you know, thank you guys for participating and listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a rowdy bunch in the chats on Friday. Cheers to everybody for hanging out with us. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk about Necros Christos, Doom of the Occult. We've got an Alan review coming up on Monday for the new Camelot record. Simon's got a album review coming as well. Friday, Tom from Sin Arcadia Productions will be on, and we'll be doing a My Dying Bride deep dive. So hang in there for that. Cheers, everybody. Anything to add or plug? Or oh yes, gas masks and hand grenades Sunday again. We'll mention it again. Kellen will be on with Jeff, and who else is hanging out with you for that?
I think Nick from Thralls.
You, Jeff, and Nick from Thralls of Metal are doing.
I think I don't. I'll let Jeff confirm, and I think his daughter's showing up. So
oh, nice. Yeah. So yeah, they're going to be on gas masks and hand grenades on Sunday at what time? 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Yeah.
5 o'clock. To do a deep dive of the Neurosis catalog. Jeff just did an interview with Steve Von Till here last week. Long, lengthy, in-depth as always. Definitely check it out. Everybody else, check out Eihwaz Recordings. Check out Killing for Company. And I'm Marty. Thanks for hanging out with us, everyone. We will see you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.